Faces dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Tuesday. It's the Tuesday tune-up, and there's lots to tune up on with managerial moves happening all over the world right now. We'll get you updated on that. We're going to talk MLS midfields as well, give you some power rankings early on as teams are still making moves. We'll talk about the World Cup qualifiers coming up. We will get into a lot of different things today. We'll also take your questions as well. You can join us on the Twitch pitch, twitch.tv/soccerdown here. You got questions, we'll try to get to them there. If you have questions about our live show coming up on Thursday at the Lost Druid in Avondale Estates, Scott Flood of the Flood Project is hanging out in the Twitch pitch. So if you have questions about the protocols, about the capacity, about Lost Druids beers, you can ask Scott right now. He's hanging out in the Twitch pitch. There's a couple of those beers that I'm looking forward to sampling. So this is going to be a fun one on Thursday. I think we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about then as well. It is a very busy time with, even during the international break, things happening frequently. We have a Serie A club who has made a managerial change. We have a Serie B club who has made a managerial change. We have a Bundesliga club that has made a managerial change. All the things happening. All the things this morning. It's going to be very busy.
Brush up your CV if you're in Italy or Germany right now.
If you're worldwide.
There are some openings.
It's the thing. If you're worldwide, I mean, it's very, very hectic right now. Yes, John has a new camera, and I know that's freaking some people out. It'll be okay. It's not too freaky, I don't think. I think it'll be all right. Jared, have you settled into this new camera from John? Are you okay with this?
I just noticed it. It just looks like a different angle to me.
Yeah, it's camera 2 as opposed to camera 1, basically.
It is
work on the background.
It is a new camera, and it's a much improved camera, and that's thanks to you guys contributing to the show. We're able to upgrade things. We're going to
drag John into the 21st century, kicking and screaming.
Well, that's not going to happen. It still had to be a camera that could easily be plugged in and just did everything on its own.
Yes, basically.
You know, we couldn't ask him to do much more than that, Jarrett. Let's be real here.
Yeah, you know what? We've made leaps and strides. Now John dials in. In the past, John used to have to pick up the receiver and tell the operator to connect him to Soccer Down here.
That's true. That's
One
true.
ringy dingy.
That happened. It didn't always go well either. It was always a problem. Those operators would get very frustrated with these things.
2 ringy dingies.
Yeah. All right. We'll get into the MLS midfields here in just a bit.
Battle against technology later.
No, we won't get into that because that's just never going to change.
Tech Down here would be one of the longest dead air shows we ever had.
Yeah. Alex Bassine, no, you still have to keep lying about John's Reed score. We'll be good for Thursday, though. Don't worry. We'll be good. But keep lying about John's Reed score. It'll make him feel good.
Yeah. Sorry, Alex.
He needs the boost. I mean, actually, you could probably take days off since Newcastle decided to take 6 of 9 days off after what they've been doing. That's usually the approach when you're doing a very, very poor job. You know, just go home for a little while.
Yeah, go home. You're good.
Are you implying they haven't been taking game days off?
Steve Bruce has. I mean, the players haven't. I don't think the players have really quit on him, but they are about to. I mean, when you're getting to the point that you're hearing the comments in the media, like, yeah, we don't really know what the manager's doing. That's a problem. When those things start to leak out, it's a big problem. When people are surprised that there haven't been changes, it's a big problem. Sorry, Alex, and all the Newcastle fans out there, but it's very bad, and they should really make a move like Bayer Leverkusen has, like Fiorentina has. Newcastle, you can join John in the 21st century now and make a change.
Okay, you too can take steps forward. Sorry, Alex.
You could. You really, really could.
See, the ones I feel bad for are the people who followed Miguel Almiron to Newcastle. Were like, I don't have an English team. I guess I'm a Newcastle fan.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's no good. That's a very sad existence.
Like, if you signed that deal with the Devil years ago, I mean, that's a little more understandable. Like,
sure.
And if you jumped over to Newcastle with Miguel Almiron, thinking I got my English team now, you do, but at what cost?
Just follow Miguel to the next stage in the process. Don't stick with Newcastle.
Yeah, not so much. The other moves that have happened today on the managerial side of things, and Newcastle is not one of them, although they probably should be. We have a change at Bayer Leverkusen. Peter Bosch is out. Hans Wolf is in to take over until the rest of the season. It's easy to forget that back in December, Leverkusen was at the top of the league. Now it's went south really badly since then. They're in sixth. They're on 40 points, but they're 21 points off the lead. Above average. They've lost three of their last four, actually. Needed to make the change here. You see the number 6 team in the Bundesliga making a change, yet Newcastle, just saying. The German side of things is going to be really interesting when we get into next season, because Bayern, there are questions about Hansi Flick long term. He doesn't get along with the sporting director. Does he take the Germany job? It's a question. Rummenigge tried to throw cold water on it. I don't know how successful that was. We'll see what happens. RB Leipzig has Julian Nagelsmann, who is linked to every possible team in the world right now. Now Roma is the latest team that has Julian Nagelsmann linked to them. So lately it has been Roma, it's been Tottenham, there's been Real Madrid, there's been Liverpool, there's been Manchester United, all linked to Julian Nagelsmann. Dortmund, we know they're going to have a change. Mönchengladbach was linked to Xabi Alonso yesterday. There's been cold water thrown on that one from Kicker, saying there's been conversations, but nothing's finalized. Kicker says that he will not be the successor, but they just say there's been conversations. I don't know if they're definitively saying that, no, it hasn't happened, or it won't happen. The top half of the Bundesliga could be really different in terms of the managers next season.
Well, and to our original point, it's like they understand that if it's time to make a change, you're going to make a change because you don't want to slip out of European football, knowing the importance of it, especially in the climate that we've been in. They're sitting there. They've gone past the point of getting a dog. They're not scared about making a change because they don't want to lose their place. They understand how things are financially these days.
Yeah. With Leverkusen, they've fallen to 6th. They lost 4 of their last 5. Wolf, the new manager at Leverkusen, was in charge of Germany's U18s. Peter Hermann will be the assistant coach. There's also a bunch of rumors now, and they started yesterday, and it continues to get louder this morning as we start the show. Felipe Cardenas has tweeted out that he can confirm per a source that Stephen Glass is set to become Aberdeen's next head coach. Sky Sports News had that a few hours ago, that he was set to return to Aberdeen as their new manager. Jarrett, with Celtic captain Scott Brown as the favorite to be named as his assistant. This came up like a month ago. Now it's the drumbeat's getting pretty loud.
Yeah, when it came up a month ago, I tried to give it like the cursory discussion piece about it on the show, and then I didn't want to really dive into it because I didn't want to. It was a weird rumor. Like I didn't want to dive headlong into
the Scott Brown
like,
part was the weird rumor.
Yeah. Not the Stephen Glass part. The Scott Brown part was the weird rumor.
Yeah.
I didn't want to dive headlong into it for a weird rumor, but that's interesting for the same reasons I talked about then. Like the dude is, kill the cliche if you want. He is a winner. He's won a ton of trophies. He knows how to approach cup games and how to approach rivalries. God, Rangers is going to hate him even more. The man's going to spent two stints of his career at their most hated clubs. This is beautiful. As far as the Stephen Glass thing goes, we'll just have to wait for the official announcement, I guess, on this. I saw it as well in the overnight when I was woken up at 5:30 by a child who couldn't sleep. Checked my phone, which you should never do because you'll never get back to sleep in a reasonable amount of time. But I saw the reports out of England as well about it.
Yeah, it started yesterday, and we mentioned it on Soccer Over There that it was picking up again. And it was hard to tell at the time if it was just a refresh on what had previously been reported, because it's news because it might be happening right now, but it's not a new development because it was talked about a while ago, and then things got kind of quiet. We'll see where this goes. I mean, it's getting kind of loud. That's all we know right now. There hasn't been anything official yet. For those of you who don't know and are listening, Aberdeen and Atlanta United do have a link. I don't know if I'd call them a feeder club. I think that's a little harsh. Atlanta United's ownership invested in Aberdeen. They paid money to be a part owner in the club, and Dave Cormack, who is the chairman now, is living in Atlanta. So there's obvious links. I mean, there's a financial investment there, and you've seen Atlanta United Academy players go and train at Aberdeen. You've seen the Ronald Hernandez situation, which I don't know if we know all the full details. That might be Dave Cormack calling you right now, John.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just to set you straight. There is a not just paper agreement to work together between the two. It's not a marketing exercise. Like, there's actually an ownership stake. So that makes it a little bit different. And I think we'd probably be further along in that relationship if you didn't have the COVID-19 outbreak. You know, I mean, we might have been further along in terms of players moving back and forth and what that looks like. We've seen John Gallagher spend time at Aberdeen. It served him very well, and he came back as a very different player when he came back to Atlanta. It was massive in his development because I think he had done all he could do at the Atlanta United 2 level. He wasn't quite ready for Atlanta United. He went to Aberdeen, did well, came back here, and was ready to go. It's hard to compare the levels because I think you're going to see some guys who just need that change of scenery and will do well from it. You'll see others who aren't getting time where they're at and they need to move the other way, like Hernandez coming on loan to Atlanta. He didn't fit in Aberdeen. It didn't work out well. I think there's also personal things going on there because you're dealing with a pandemic, and he moved to a new country, 6 weeks before everything shut down? Couldn't see his family. I mean, it's rough. So every situation, I think you have to take it on its own, but they will work together. And I think that'll be to the benefit of both clubs. You know, it's not about one's a parent, one's a feeder. I think it's more about both clubs will work together and gain in their own ways because they operate in kind of different worlds. You know, that's what it is.
Also, to bury this before it gets out of the ground, the rumors of Stephen Glass in the first place it's not just because it's an Atlanta United Aberdeen thing. No. Stephen Glass has a history with Aberdeen, an extensive history. This isn't like they're just grabbing the second team manager because of the relationship, potentially. No, this is a matter of a guy who happens to be managing the second team in your partner club, but he has an extensive history with the club itself. And it wasn't like a cup of coffee for half a year.
Yeah, and that happened before the Atlanta United Aberdeen connection happened, that Stephen Glass was in Atlanta to begin with. So
yeah, I just want to make sure that doesn't become a thing.
Yeah. He was here. He came to the States to play at the end of his career with the Carolina Railhawks. He was in Atlanta as an academy manager with the U17s. Got the opportunity with Atlanta United 2 going into the 2019 season, and the relationship built after that was already in place between Atlanta and Aberdeen. Look, it's complicated. It's complicated because you have one club with, a century of history, and you have one club with 5 years on the field of history, 4 years on the field starting fifth year. They're looked at differently because of that. But you also have the economics of the situation as well, and they're in different places. So it's a complicated thing. But I really do think that there's no setup here to hurt one club or the other over the other one. It doesn't make any sense. If you have an ownership stake in a club, you want it to thrive and you want it to be successful. So we'll see where this goes. The rumors are out there. The reporting is pretty strong from major outlets in Scotland. We'll keep you posted on updates as they get announced and what happens here, because I would imagine because of all these different updates that maybe there's something going on at some point.
Yeah. Jarrett, before we go, the Scott Brown part of this, I want to get into this a little bit. How much does a guy like Scott Brown have left in the tank? What can he do for Aberdeen if this comes to pass?
Okay, if this comes to pass, and I'm not believing it until it happens, just because it's rumors and all that jazz, and we don't have the rumor sounder anymore, sadly. WWE is no fun.
No.
He is, I mean, like I said, it is the cliche of he is a winner, Paul, but no, like the dude literally has won an obscene amount of trophies and is captain Celtic through a very successful spell. He does not have a lot to take physically, in my opinion, anymore. His legs have run out. He's 35 years old. He might give you, he might be that guy who honestly plays like Kubo Torres does for Atlanta United this year. He might be down on the depth chart and might play a couple games, come off the bench. He might start one or two, but he's not a guy you lean on. He's a guy who I think you bring into kind of change mentality in terms of, building a bit of an edge. Honestly, I don't mind Scott Brown teaching young guys the dark arts. There's a lot worse guys in Scotland you can get than Scott Brown to teach the dark arts because he has a long list of people he has baited into cards through his chicanery, let's call it.
Chicanery is a good word for it.
Yes, that is a good word of the day.
It is straight up dark arts, and he is very much one of those. If he's on your team, when he was younger, if he's on your team, you love him. If he was not, you wanted to hit him with a pipe, and that won't end. But I'm curious to see what kind of manager he would be, what kind of assistant manager he would be if this comes to pass. I think he's got a good mind for the game, from interviews, but I don't know if that translates to coaching because that doesn't always translate. You can have a guy who knows the game beautifully who just can't translate it as a coach. They can talk about it, but getting it over to someone else and imprinting it on, the next generation's a different animal. But I think he would bring a bit of an edge, and maybe if you're trying to change things up mentality-wise, you can do a lot worse with that. The reactions are going to be amazing, if it happens. Oh my God, you're going to want to bookmark Aberdeen Twitter.
You probably want to go ahead and do that anyway, because there's a lot of opinions about everything going on right now, and I understand it. I mean, I get it. I'm coming at it from the outside. I'm coming at it from a different perspective. So it's not right to say that that's wrong, that's an overreaction, whatever. Like it's coming from a different place than I can come from. Because I haven't grown up with Aberdeen. I'm not a longtime supporter. It hasn't been in my family for years. But it is an interesting situation. It's a really different spot for a long, proud, historic club to be in. And it does feel like a reset in a lot of ways. Scott Brown in this situation, as Ram points out, one of our resident Aberdeen fans in the Twitch pitch, says he was man of the match in the game on the weekend. He did look good on the weekend for Celtic. Ram says he can get up for the big games. I think in this kind of role, you're not necessarily going to be asking him to play 90 minutes, game in, game out, week in, week out. It will be big games, but it will also be in big moments at times. And the mentality is the number one thing that Jared, I think you're dead on about is, you can say what you want about, what kind of player Scott Brown has turned into. You can hate the dark arts. You can be entertained by them. But he will force the players around him to have the needed urgency and intensity to get things done. And that's going to be non-negotiable if he's in the team or if he's on the touchline.
He will drag them through the game if he has to. He has been known to do that. That's an interesting shot for man of the match. He was good in that game. Part of that is, and we discussed this, part of that was because that game was really slow-paced, and that kind of suited where he is now, whereas when he was younger, he could play a much faster-paced game. But like I said, the legs are kind of going. But, yeah, he can get up. He can score the odd goal, in the big moment when you need him to, but I will always wonder, man, Scott Brown in Italy would have been a treat. It'd have been like one of those box of chocolates where someone ripped off the inside cover that shows you what each one is. You don't really know what you're going to get here, It might be good. It might send you into anaphylactic shock. There's really no way to tell.
I don't know why you would be trying to create an international incident like that, Jarrett. That's
Scott Brown, dark arts.
You're lucky. You're lucky he retired from international football before they made the Euros to play England.
Yeah, that could have gotten ugly. This is going to be a fascinating watch, and I think for fans on both sides of this relationship with Atlanta and Aberdeen, which, again, the timing of the pandemic was horrible because, I mean, you were starting to see links between different sets of fans. Like, there were Atlanta fans talking about going over to Scotland to see Aberdeen. There were Aberdeen fans talking about coming to Atlanta in the summer and hanging out. Hopefully that happens, and hopefully this is another thing that strengthens it. It could be really good here. There are questions, and you just have to see how it plays out. The Scott Brown element's a question. Stephen Glass has the experience with Atlanta United, too. He has the experience with Atlanta United as the caretaker manager last year. Aberdeen's a big job, and it's a different kind of set of expectations. And I think, Aberdeen fans understand this, but for Atlanta United fans, if you're looking at Aberdeen, Jarrett, and you know the Scottish game far more than I do, is this a wrong way to put it? You look at Scotland, you've got Celtic, you've got Rangers. Right now, flip them because Rangers has been better this season than Celtic. And there's a huge gap back to Aberdeen, Hibs. Those have been the two this year. Maybe there's another one here and there that can pop into that next group. Winning league titles is not impossible, but you're talking about everything having to go your way and the big clubs both having to struggle. You can get into Europe, though. You can make cup runs. There are things that you can measure your success by. But league titles, it's not impossible. It's just incredibly difficult. And it's probably not the goals that you're setting for any manager coming in.
Yeah, you're talking about, and Graham would be able to speak to this as well, as he's probably followed Aberdeen much longer than any of us have. I would sooner bet money that someone pulls a Leicester in England than someone other than the old firm win the Scottish League right now, just because of the way it is. I mean, the financial gulf it's comical is what it is. The best way I can put it. The amount of money that Celtic spends is laughable. Rangers is not far behind them, and they're spending a little more every year. They had to, they really did have to rebuild that club from the ground up. Aberdeen doesn't spend a ton. Hibs don't spend a ton. Comparatively speaking, Hibs does a good job of developing talent. Aberdeen has done a good job of developing talent, and that's where I think you're kind of hoping to catch lightning in a bottle, where you can get one of the cup runs if it's possible, because I just don't see one of them winning the league right now, and it sucks that it is a 2-horse race, but that's just the nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the financials, but there are things that the club can be measured by, and it is cup runs. I mean, that's definitely part of it, and you have a Scottish Cup,
European
you have the Scottish League Cup.
Now that now that you've got the coefficient, I completely forgot about. Shame, but the coefficient change is now you're going to get an actual shot in Europe.
Yeah,
you're third or fourth.
Yeah, you're going to get a legitimate shot. So there are going to be things that you're measured by. Stay tuned is all we know at this point, because it's unclear as to what's going to happen. But as we said, the drum beat's getting pretty loud. Mentioned Felipe Cardenas's tweet from a little while ago. So, and Sky Sports and many, many others have had this. So stay tuned. We will keep you posted. There is another managerial change this morning, and this time it's in Italy. Cesare Prandelli is out as the Fiorentina manager. He has resigned. Beppe Iacchini is back. Everybody reported that he had resigned earlier. He has officially resigned now. He'd only been there for 4 months. Former Italy manager took the reins mid-season. Iacchini had left after the start of a poor season. He comes back, which is incredibly strange. It didn't get any better when Prandelli came in. They are in the bottom quarter of the table. They did beat Juventus at the end of last season away, which was a huge win. It just hasn't ever progressed from there. And Fiorentina is a club that, came in with Rocco Camiso with big talk and big expectations, and they're going to be safe. They're 7 points clear of the drop right now in Italy. They're going to be okay, but they're not where they want to be. They don't want to just be okay. They don't want to be 14th. They want to be challenging for European spots. They're nowhere close to that right now.
Yeah, I mean, their run of form has, just been kind of there. Fiorentina in their last 15, 5-3-7, which puts them mid-table at, in the last 15 matches. But, in their last 5, you're looking at only winning 1. And, once again, you're trying to make sure that your place is secure. And so you're going to make a move, although this move reminds me more of the Billy Martin kind of a move with the New York Yankees than anything else, where you bring back somebody who you've had in the past as opposed to trying to bring in someone who brings a fresh perspective. So we'll see how this flies. It raised an eyebrow this morning, bringing somebody back. So we'll see what happens with this one. It was a head scratcher.
Yeah, I can't remember ever seeing a time when a manager was replaced at the beginning of it, or not at the beginning of the season, mid-season, and then the replacement didn't work out, and then that manager comes back.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Italy. You also have a change in Serie B, another one where it's some people that here. That's the thing. Fabio Grosso is set to become the new Frosinone manager. He just came down from Serie A not long ago. Alessandro Nesta was sacked this afternoon. Spent some time with the Miami FC here in the States, but it didn't work out at Frosinone for him. He's out. Fabio Grosso.
They should have hired the mascot.
They probably should have. They probably should have. Nesta is somebody that people have been high on as a manager. It hasn't worked yet. We'll see if a club with a different situation might take a shot, or maybe he has to go the assistant route for a little while. But so you've got Frosinone, you've got Fiorentina, you've got Leverkusen, and yes, there are the drum beats very loud out of Scotland on Aberdeen. We will keep you posted on all of these as things happen. I want to see how this works out for Leverkusen. I mean, do they get a bump and get into a European spot now? I think it's definitely possible, and that's why they made the move today.
Yeah, I mean, that was my gut on something like this, where you think that you've got a shot and you feel like, all right, we're going to try to stem this negative momentum, try to do something really quickly. And I mean, at 40 points, everybody's even at 26 matches, but you're only 3 behind Dortmund. They put you into 5th, and then you've lost 3 of your last 4, but Eintracht Frankfurt is 7 points ahead of you. So really, that's what you're having to do. You could probably hopscotch Dortmund to get you into 5th, and that's the realistic one. But you've really got to get into a run to make up that 7 points to get you into 4th right now.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to try. You got to try to jump it and make a move and see what you can get done here. They're not going to wait. And that's the interesting thing about it. And you see some teams want to stick with somebody for the whole season, give them every opportunity to get it right. And you see others who have the quicker trigger. I mean, Leverkusen sees that if we're going to get to Europe, we've got to do it now. Because, I mean, how many games left?
8.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to get that new manager bump and get it strong and jump into one of these spots because the money's so big. And that's the thing about it, especially right now, is that's a huge source of revenue that if you have a shot at it, you got to go for it. You've got to go for it. Hutchozone with the throwback of the day. Remember when Ted Turner fired Bobby Cox, and then when asked at the press conference what sort of manager he'd be looking for, he said someone like Bobby Cox.
True. Yes.
Yeah, always good when you get those sort of things. Oh, here we go. All right, hold on. Aberdeen Football Club, we are delighted to confirm Stephen Glass as the new manager of Aberdeen FC. It is official. Glassy goes home, gets to return to a club that means a ton to him, and Atlanta United too. Now there are questions about what happens next. I think from the Atlanta perspective, and we'll talk about the Scottish perspective too here, don't worry, but from an Atlanta perspective, Stephen Glass did a lot in his time here in Atlanta. And I think a lot of people are going to look at his time here based off of the time as a caretaker manager, which it's not your team. Yeah. What you need to look at for him is George Campbell's development in 2019. George Campbell might not be an MLS player who is pushing for first-team minutes if he didn't play for Stephen Glass in 2019. The immense development of players like Will Riley, like Coleman Gannon, like David Mejia, like Matthew Edwards, like Caleb Wiley. I mean, so many guys who came through the Twos program. I think it was Stephen who really brought the mentality of if they're good enough, I don't care how old they are, they're going to play. And he held them to high standards. He didn't baby the kids coming through. I think he created the environment that they could fit into. He surrounded them with the veteran guys that could kind of lift the kids up and to help develop them. But he created an environment of development. And it's such an important part of a club. You know, I've said it a lot that guys like Steven and guys like Tony Annan don't get the headlines. They don't get the spotlight. That's not their job. But they are so vital to the DNA of any successful club because they're the ones who prepare the next generation. And in a perfect world, you know, when we start talking about you need depth at this position, you need depth at this position, it's coming from the team, from the development, because you're producing guys that can step right in. You're producing guys who have that understanding of what it means to be an Atlanta United player. And I think it's guys over the last couple of years like Tony and Steven who have, I think, better defined what that is, what an Atlanta United kind of player is from the youth level, developing from the youth level. It's critical. It's just absolutely critical to have people who get that mentality. So that's going to be a big loss for Atlanta United too. And that's going to be a very important role to fill. It's not just a reserve manager who's there to manage guys who aren't playing with the first team or manage the kids just to give them a run out. It's a very important role in establishing principles. Those principles of play are critical, but establishing what it means to be a professional. And that starts with Tony and the second team, Atlanta United 2, what Stephen Glass has done over the last couple of years. That's where you get guys ready. George Campbell is a prime example. George Campbell, going into 2019, was not looked at as a guy who would be playing in MLS in 2020. He wasn't. He wasn't even really looked at as a player who would be playing a lot in 2019, to be perfectly clear about it. He was a player who was still transitioning to playing center back. He was a player who was growing a lot, literally, physically, and he was a player who you didn't really know what he projected to be. There were other center backs ahead of him in line. Kendall Edwards was supposed to get that opportunity. He got hurt. He didn't get it. Garrison Tubbs was supposed to get that opportunity. He didn't get it. The pandemic affected his availability. It affected the number of games that he could play. George Campbell just kept his head down and just kept going and just kept working. And I think somebody like Stephen Glass kept working with him. There's so many guys who are in a better position because of Glassy's time with Atlanta United too. And I think he was very important last season with the first team as well in righting the ship because, look, you've all read the interviews. You've all read the different things. I think it's obvious when you had to make a managerial change that something was wrong. You needed to get back to basics. I thought that's what Stephen Glass did more than anything with the first team. He had a ton of things going against him. He barely had training sessions with them, but he did have them in competition for a playoff spot, and he started to get them back at times, and it was hard to do consistently because of availability of players, but at times playing in a way that is going to suit them going forward. He cleared the decks for me from what was there before, especially about dropping deeper. He had them playing on the front foot far more than they were early in 2020. He was changing that mentality to where it's going now. And I think it's easier now for Gabriel Heinze to come in and get this first team where he wants because of the work that Glass did second half of last season. So it's a big loss for the club, but it's a huge opportunity for Stephen Glass. There's just no way around it. I mean, it's not just going to any club either. It's going to a club that means a lot to him. It's a club that is in his heart, and it's a club that he loves and wants to be, wants to see winning things. And he's going to fight like hell for them to be winning things. And, for Atlanta fans who have followed Stephen's career, it's great that you're going to be able to keep up with what's going on at Aberdeen because of the relationship. And I think it does strengthen that relationship. I think it's obviously a point that you'd think about now with players that he knows very, very well that he's managed that could make the move over there. Maybe they're not ready for an Atlanta United contract yet. Maybe they are ready for an Aberdeen deal. Maybe it's guys who are blocked here. And I think that's the thing to understand, because there will be a reaction if he brings a Will Riley, for example. I'm just pulling a name out because he's got a lot of players in front of him with the first team. If Will Riley goes to Aberdeen, well, it would make sense for everybody because it's a position that maybe they could need. It's a position group here that you've got Santiago Sosa, who's 21. You've got Franco Ibarra, who's 19. You got Mo Adams, who's 24. There's not a lot of room for a central midfielder to come up in this team right now. So, okay, maybe he goes there. Maybe that's the next step for him. Glass is going to know who's ready out of Atlanta for that move, and it's going to benefit both teams. Again, it's going to benefit both clubs. So it's going to be interesting. Ram, I hope people give it a chance. I do. I understand the mentality why people don't want to, because they see it as something being imposed. I think he can be very, very successful. I've talked to him so many times about the game and the way he sees the game. He has a modern view on the way the game should be played. He is still a learning manager. He is still a developing manager. He's like a lot of young managers. He's constantly getting better, and I think he's learning new things. But he's a guy who the vision is very good. The vision of the game that he wants to see on the field from his team is very, very good. And, John and I calling Atlanta United 2 games had a chance to see that a lot in 2019. A young team, younger than almost every team they played in the league, that didn't play like kids. They did not play like boys. They played guys who had, at times, a decade worth of experience against 16 and 17-year-olds. And they held their ground. Did they have some bad results? Yeah, they did, because they're 16 and 17-year-olds. But in general, the play was better in 19 than it was in 18, and it was trending in a great direction in 20. And then Stephen had to make the move to the first team. And like I said, I think he got everything kind of heading in the right direction at that point.
Yeah, you mentioned the word that just popped into my head with what we saw with Atlanta United 2 and the younger players in 19 and 20 was a fearlessness about them. It's like, okay, yes, so what? You're 10 years older than I am. You're twice my age. I don't care. And you mentioned guys like Campbell and Will Riley, Coleman Gannon, Mejia, Matt Edwards, Wiley. All of these guys, they went out there and they were learning and they were improving, and there was that sense of belonging that was a part of that whole process as they were learning their time with Atlanta United too. And when Glassy went up and was taking care of things for Atlanta United, there was, once again, it was righting the ship, and there was that backing of the players. And I'm going to be there for them 24/7. I'm going to defend what's going on from the touchline. There was, once again, it was that sense of unity that he was there, that he was a part of as caretaker manager, and it was righting the ship, and you could tell that things were trending, the whole togetherness thing. So there were a lot of different things running through my head as you were talking about what Stephen Glass has meant, not just for Atlanta United 2 and the development there, but for what we saw last season when he took over for Atlanta United.
Jarrett, you followed the two super close. Just your thoughts on Stephen's time here.
I think for me it was the cojones that kind of developed there. And you touched on it, but it was the talent that you're seeing come through. And we've talked about that in the past, is that the talent was always going to get better because Atlanta United's academy was going to start producing guys at an earlier age. You're going to get guys who were in the academy, in the setup, in the weight program, in the nutrition program at a younger age. So those guys were going to have a much more positive impact on things. But I think a lot of it for me was just the swagger they played with, especially into 2019, where it went from being a bunch of kids who were kind of over their heads at times, would have moments, and those moments turned into segments of the game or turned into complete games where they were able to, they looked fearless at times playing against older guys. And I think that's something that you're looking at if you're Aberdeen, of we got a manager who can come in here. If he can instill that to where he can come in and say, we're going to play whoever is on the other side, and we're not going to give a damn what shirt they have on. I think it's important, especially in Scotland. If you're not Rangers or Celtic, I think that's an important thing to go in there. And you want to, you're going to respect the fact that they've got a bigger wage bill and they've got bigger name players, but you can't go in there afraid. I think that's something he can bring to the table.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an important thing. Also, the development. And I think that's where a club, an Aberdeen situation, which, again, I think it's really important to understand this. You look at the squad valuations. I'm not getting into the payrolls. The payrolls we know are different. I don't have exact numbers on that. Just the squad valuations from somebody independent like Transfermarkt. You're talking about such a dramatic difference in the top two teams in Scotland and somebody like Aberdeen. Talent is what's going to win you trophies more often than not. It doesn't always. You do get the Leicester situations, which how many other Leicester situations are there? To be perfectly honest, how many times has that happened? I don't have another.
They don't.
Yeah. Like Blackburn in 92 in the 90s or something?
Yeah, that doesn't even count. That's a whole different world. That's before the TV money got big. When the TV money got big and there was the separation, no, it doesn't happen except for Leicester. There's not like, the underdog story of this and that. And it's the Leicester situation. So it would be even more dramatic for somebody like Aberdeen. The squad valuations right now, and this is, again, it's Transfermarkt independent. It's a valuation. It's not 100% accurate. Celtic, $108.98 million for their squad of 27 players. That's what they are worth according to Transfermarkt. $108.98 million. Rangers has a squad of 26, $88 million. Hibs is next with a squad of 25, $16.91 million. 88 to 16. Aberdeen is listed with a squad of 22, $15.95 million. 15.95 versus 88 for the team that's going to win the league, and Celtic at 108.98. That's a difference of a lot.
Yeah.
Even John, with his bad math, knows that's a big difference.
That's a big difference.
That's huge. So, how do you bridge that gap? You develop talent. And that is the number one reason why I think this move makes a lot of sense. You need somebody who understands that. And it's a different mentality. And his time with Atlanta United, too, is going to be critical to this. I said this on the Here We Go Aberdeen podcast. He has overseen the development of players for the first team, or he's been involved in helping them in that step. When George Bello needed to get ready for the U17 World Cup coming back from injury, it was trusted that the best place for him would be to play day in and day out, train day in and day out with Atlanta United 2 and Stephen Glass. George Bello is a pretty big, important part of this club's future in Atlanta, right? They trusted him to get Bello ready for that tournament and get Bello ready for 2020 and beyond. He did. George Campbell's development, we've talked about. Other young players' development, we've talked about. Setting the expectation. Byrne said something in the Twitch pitch that I think is important. You took Atlanta United 2 from a team that you played guys coming down from the first team. You played guys who were very talented and tried to turn them into professionals. You took it to, this is a professional team, and if you are ready to be a professional, you can play here. And you set a level of expectation that is needed because talent's vital, but you got to have the mentality. And he gets how to bridge the gap with both. He does. And that's something that Aberdeen's going to need. It's something that any club outside of Celtic and Rangers need because you can't just go buy the next superstar. You got to make it. You got to make the next superstar. And that's what can be something that bridges the gap. And that's not even like simple. That's not easy because we all wish we could create a Lionel Messi. You can't. You got to work at it. But you keep building from within. That's how you can bridge the gap here. So that's why the hire makes sense to me. We'll see if it works out. Lot of comments on the Twitch pitch. I'm sure there's some questions on Twitter, John. Let's get to what we have on Twitter first.
It's from Tafka. Tafka's got a couple of thoughts about Glassy, and he says people seem to be thinking that Glass is an underhire with the added perk of being a former player for Aberdeen. This seems like a fairly level move for the coach and the club.
Tafka, it's hard for, I think, people on this side of the Atlantic who don't follow the Scottish Premiership day in and day out and don't have the history with it to understand it. I don't fully understand it. You're talking about clubs that have hundreds of years of experience and history and generation after generation following them. It is it's not, it's just different that now you have what's going on in MLS and you have the squad valuations in MLS versus Hibs and Aberdeen and everybody outside of Celtic and Rangers. And honestly, right next to Celtic and Rangers, the top clubs in MLS are like your Celtics and your Rangers, a little bit under Celtic. But, everybody has a squad valuation higher than Hibs and Aberdeen and Motherwell and the next group. It's just the game's changed. The business has changed. And that changes everything. And it's not always a comfortable place to be in when you have been. I mean, going back to the 80s, Sir Alex Ferguson, before he was Sir Alex Ferguson, won European trophies with Aberdeen. That was long ago, but it wasn't long ago. And now it's a very different world, and I don't know if everybody is okay with the difference in the world now. And I understand that. I get it. It's hard to understand. It's hard to feel the same way. But I get that there still is that pride of we've been around a lot longer than the club he's coming from. We should be able to attract somebody bigger or with more experience. I mean, some of the names that have come up about Celtic's job, for example, have been the same way. It's like, that's not realistic. But it's a different mentality. And I do understand at least where it comes from, even if I don't necessarily get it. Jared, is that in the ballpark for you about how, you're taking some of these, I think, attitudes towards Glass being hired by Aberdeen?
Some of it, for some of it for me is a matter of, it's unfortunately it's not 1982 anymore, and it's hard to find. It's hard to find that up and coming manager and to fit what your bill when you are, living at $15 to $20 million pounds a year on a budget. You're not, and especially in a pandemic year, you're not gonna be shelling out for the big name guys, and you're looking around for the guy who might be the sneaky good hire who goes on. I mean, everybody wants to pull off what Aberdeen pulled off 40 years ago when they had Alex Ferguson managing the club. And then he jumps to Manchester United. No, that'll never work. It worked out fine. Everybody wants that, but that might be that you might not strike oil like that again in your club's history. It just might not.
And so he wasn't Sir Alex Ferguson when he was at Aberdeen either.
No, he's just Alex Ferguson.
Well, yes, but he wasn't even like anybody.
Yes, he had not been knighted yet.
That is true, yes. But when I say that, I mean he wasn't anybody that people were expecting to be what he became. He was just a manager.
And you're hoping to catch, lightning in a bottle with a manager, but it's harder when you're on the lower end there in terms of what you're willing to spend for guys. And be honest. Again, we talked about this. You're going into a job where you're not expected to win the league.
No.
It'd be great if you did, but
get to Europe.
Look at the hill you got to climb.
Mm-hmm.
It is Olympus Mons. We are on the surface of Mars, and you're climbing Olympus Mons at this point. If you're trying to win the league with Aberdeen, or with Hibs, or with St. Johnstone, or with Motherwell, or whoever, I think there is, and I don't mean it in a mean way of like, because I don't know how to say it any other way other than like, I mean, you kind of have to measure your expectations based on, based on where you at and what you think you can get.
Yeah, it's just different, and it's maybe a little hard to accept in some ways, and I get it. It's so different, and I want this to work out in general. So I really hope that it works out for Aberdeen. I think the development side of it is what they will be hanging their hat on with this hire, is that Stephen Glass can, one, I think, help Aberdeen create a better development pathway, which is necessary. Two, I think he can, the young players that are there, he can get them up a level. And the biggest thing that I would consistently see out of his teams is that spirit that was necessary to play up high, to press up high, to play in the other team's half. I mean, everything that we've talked about with Gabriel Heinze coming into this season for Atlanta United, Stephen Glass's teams were doing it. I mean, we talked about it at times in 2019, especially later in the year, as Atlanta United's MLS team adjusted a bit to what they had to work with, and they started playing in a 3-5-2. They started to play a little deeper. They weren't playing quite as high. They weren't pressing after they lost the ball in the same way. The second team wasn't doing that because the second team was building for the long term, and the second team was building the Atlanta United way, which, Stevens told us this in interviews. Tony Annan's told us this. It is about the things that are key to Gabriel Heinze as well. It's about controlling games. It's about controlling the ball. It's also about controlling the opposition, limiting their chances, playing fast, putting them under pressure. Those things that, at times tactically you make changes to win a game. The second team, that's not their job. The second team, it is about the philosophy. It is about the principles of play. It is about the identity. And that's what we consistently saw, honestly, very early in Stephen Glass's time with Atlanta United too. So I'm excited to see him have the opportunity to do that at Aberdeen. Jared, I don't know if we've heard anything yet. I mean, it's been announced now, so you've got the split starting after the international break. I'm guessing that they wanted to get this done so they could get him in, one, because maybe you can jump up into third. Maybe you can have some results here quickly off the bump. But also, so next season starts even better than waiting until the summer.
Yeah, I think that's part of it is, I don't know if he jumps in right away. I haven't looked at the press release, sorry. But either he's going to probably just be thinking, good God, can I have some training time with a team that I take over, please? Because sure as hell didn't get it with the first team here, and everyone's on international break right now. I think if he takes over for the split, you see if you can catch Hibs. I don't know if you can. I think you're 9 points back. Hibs.
7 now.
7 points back. If you can catch them, that's awesome. But if nothing else, you have a weird summer with the Euros, with Olympics. I think you want to get as much time as you can before the start of next season, and this is a good way to do that. So you don't come in the summer and, okay, cool, we got some work to do. Well, half the team, so you got guys over at Olympics. Okay, what about, those guys might be at Euros. So I don't know how many guys they're sending out, but it's going to be such a convoluted summer that I think it's good to get him in now and get things moving.
I did see one of the things about the move happening now was about the Scottish Cup, and you'd have to explain that to me as to where they're at. I think they're in the second round right now, which is still the smaller teams. I know they held everything up because of the lower divisions not playing until recently.
And they're playing today.
Yeah, the lower divisions are playing today. I don't know where the
because I almost picked that for one of our bets last night.
That would have been,
there were no good.
Been horrible.
There weren't a lot of good numbers.
That would have been horrible.
And plus, y'all Yeah, you didn't know any of those teams.
We would have righted.
Yeah.
I don't know where the championship and premiership teams come in, but it sounded like they're going to have a match here at some point while this one's going on.
Right. Round of 32 is where they come in, and so it is after this round that is currently being played is when the big clubs come into the round of 16.
Yeah, I saw his name. The big clubs come in the round of 16.
Yeah.
This is the round of 32, or this is the second round?
Round of 32.
This is the round.
We're in the round of 32. They come into the round of 16.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that's the other reason is they want to go on a cup run. We've got some comments on the Twitch pitch. Patrick says, hopefully Glass is given the time at Aberdeen to implement his program. They gave McInnes a million years, and the last few of those have been declining results. They gave him time, Jarrett. I mean, McInnes did have time.
McInnes also had a really good run at Aberdeen. Like, I get it ended poorly. McInnes didn't have a don't let the ending fool you from some really good moments. I mean, if Celtic doesn't go on a legendary run where they win 12 trophies in a row, there's a good chance Aberdeen wins at least one or two more. And his trophy haul is more impressive. And I think that might shift the way it's kind of looked at. Yeah, I'm not going to poo-poo McInnes at all.
A lot of questions about what's next for Atlanta United too, and I don't know. I mean, short term, Tony Annan moving back into that role as an interim makes a ton of sense. You are about a month away from games. You think we don't know when they're going to start in the USL Championship. It's fluid for USL in the championship level. They haven't announced the schedule yet. League One has. It's fluid on when they start, and a lot of that's down to the local regulations and getting fans in the stands, and they wanted to leave wiggle room on when teams would start. We haven't heard an update yet on this, but a month, roughly, is what you're looking at. So, did you have an idea this would happen? It's been a little while since they moved on from McInnes, and you would assume that the conversation came up fairly early because of the relationship. I think from the reports that came out last night, there was an interview that happened last week. So then you start to plan ahead and you start to figure it out. Tony can step in the short term, no problem. There was another question on the Twitch pitch. Would you go to an Argentine manager here potentially? And you could. The twos have been linked more to the academy than the first team with Atlanta United. That's been the mentality. In Argentina, the reserve team is often linked more with the first team. Now, I think here it's a little unique just because of the situation with the academy players playing in these games. They can't play in first-team games. I don't know if that mentality works with a first-team connected coach there, or if it's better to keep the twos more attached to the academy as an extension. That's going to be a decision for Carlos Bocanegra, for Darren Eales, to figure out what direction they want to go from the soccer side of that. I think in the short term, you're good with Tony Annan. He's going to know the player roster from the academy players, which are going to make up a large number of it. He's going to know that inside and out. He's going to know the first-team guys that would be in contention for loans down to play games. They're guys that he's coached probably at the academy or he coached last year with the twos. Those are easy initial steps. Long term, I don't know. Tony's the academy director. It's tough to do both. And he told us about how, his days were very long last year doing both. That might not be something you can do on a regular basis. Then do you want him in the twos role? Do you want him in the academy director role? These are things that you have to sit down and figure out what the best plan is for the club going forward, because Atlanta United 2 is a very, very important part of this club. And as I've said many times, in a perfect world, you develop your talent, and then you supplement it with your checkbook that you can go out and sign players from a lot of different places in the world, and you can spend some money on it. But you want the base of your squad to come from being homegrown. One, it's more effective. It's smarter financially, and you sell those players and you develop them. That's how your club grows. But two, they know the club inside and out. We've talked about it with somebody like Alan Franco, for example. A center back coming in who is coming from a different way of playing where the center backs aren't really asked to be in possession very much. There's going to be an adjustment for him. That's difficult. For somebody like George Campbell, it's not as difficult because at the academy, he played that way. At Atlanta United, too, he played that way. So you want it to come from inside as much as you can, but that's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. All right, we got just past 10 o'clock. Jared, are you able to hang out with us any longer, or do you got to go? You work and stuff.
He had to duck out real quick, but he said he'd be back.
He'll be back. All right, so that gives us perfect time then. John, you get to tell us about our good friend over in Decatur, Steve Apolinsky.
Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, there's only one place you need to go, and it is the firm of Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. 3 different ways that you can get in touch with the firm. You can shoot Steve an email directly, steve@aa-legal.com. You can give him a phone call, get a free consultation, 404-377-99191, or your third option is to go on the World Wide Web, large device or small, in the address bar, aa-legal.com. Get the enter key, the return key, the arrow key, whatever advances you to the homepage. And in addition to the accolades that we don't get the chance to talk about on a daily basis, any question that you have about Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, about what cases they chase, what their dimensions are when it comes to all of this stuff, all of the different accolades, all the different approaches, all the different topics that you can have addressed right there on the homepage. But if you still don't have your answers, you can go to the pop-up window, low right-hand corner, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. Thank you, Chris Hutchison. You can get your questions answered that way. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in 2 time zones in Georgia and Alabama, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, there's only one place you need to go. It's Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, and the website is aa-legal.com.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't say that in a good way, John.
Oh, I know. I know you didn't say it in a good way.
You seemed excited about it. Yeah, chasing case is probably bad terminology. Probably very bad terminology. Minus 2.5 because of the lighting. That takes it to a 6.5. Flub, 7.4. Yeah, people aren't excited about this one, John. It's not good. It's not good.
Well, the lighting can be adjusted, but I don't want it to create flares and make it look like I'm being completely and totally washed out here. That's something that's going to have to be tested.
I love that you put in so much effort to the lighting, and you never have on microphones. That's wonderful. I love that.
I'm building.
Yeah, but you had microphones for years and didn't really ever matter. A 4, a minus 1.5 for the weird lighting, a minus 2 for the chasing cases, a plus 1 for the new camera angle, a minus 1 for the brain fart on the accolade section, a minus 4 for the chasing cases and case dimensions. Not bad, but not good. 3.9780.
Thank you, Sean.
6.2, a 10 because of the new camera effect. Did something just happen? I nodded off for a moment. That's accurate. I wish I had. Is that a 400-watt bulb?
Probably. That's why it's not directly in my face.
Yeah. 7.8. I still appreciate that John changes up the read a lot more. South Georgia, yes, his image is in focus. That is a good thing. Like I said, I'm a little miffed, absolutely miffed by this, that the lighting has become more of a priority than the actual speaking instrument, so John can be heard. That was always secondary. Just saying. Alex Bassine says it felt like a 10. He didn't hear it. He was on a call. You need a 40-watt because that would be thematic. That's accurate, Katie.
Yes.
A 10 for just being consistently bad. I like it. That's the best score ever.
The inverted appreciation from Mr. Fantastic.
Yes, I like that. I like that a lot. Alex Bassine is in pain, Sean Vergara. That's why his scores are high. He's trying to bring some positivity. Newcastle is very, very painful these days. We're all into the continuous improvement, Hutcho. That is absolutely correct. We're trying to make this better. We're trying to make this a better thing. 7 out of 11 or 7-11 out of Tommy. I need a Slurpee.
Oh, I need a double big gulp.
Yes, you need a double big. That's gross. That's too much.
It's 128 ounces.
That is too much. I'm getting linked for interviews I did in Scotland in November of 2019. Nice.
Nice.
And yeah, things are very hectic at the moment with the excitement around Stephen Glass going to Aberdeen. There's going to be a lot of talk about this on both sides of the Atlantic. We will keep you posted on all the stories coming out of it. Waiting to see, I guess the next step is what his staff is going to look like in Aberdeen, and the next step on this side is the next steps for Atlanta United too, and what the short term and long term will be there for that. So other news today, we are going to talk about MLS midfields and the depth charts and power rankings of MLS midfields. We'll get into that in a minute. Some other things to keep an eye on today. Romelu Lukaku will be joining up with Belgium after testing negative for COVID. There's been an outbreak at Inter, but he is good. Initially, players were prohibited from leaving Italy to go on international duty, but because of his negative tests, he will be able to go. They need him. They're going to be without Eden Hazard. They're going to be without Axel Witsel, who are both injured. Belgium plays Wales on Wednesday. They play the Czech Republic in Prague on Saturday. They host Belarus next Tuesday. These schedules are stupid and moronic. Mm-hmm. They should not be playing 3 games right now. It's horrible. The senior official at the Cameroon Football Federation is clapping back at everybody after the reports yesterday that they sent an email to themselves about Choupo-Moting from Bayern coming to Cameroon's national team for AFCON qualifiers. The team manager sent an email to each player and copied their club and agent. It is the same for Choupo-Moting, but Bayern did not respond to us about his availability. Throwing that shade back at Bayern, so let's see what Bayern has to say about that. We're going to get into the CONCACAF World Cup qualifying as well. There will be some of these games in March on Paramount+. 17 games will stream on the new service over the first 5 match days, according to Soccer America. We'll go into a little more detail on that. Rumors out of Italy and France about Mauro Icardi. He could be headed to Roma, and Edin Dzeko could be leaving Roma. Now, that had come up back in January. It didn't happen. He's got 1 year left on his deal, €7.5 million a season. Looks like he's on the way out. He fell out with Paulo Fonseca, the manager, stripped to the captaincy. Was linked with a move to Juventus last summer. It fell through. Roma's looking at a deal with PSG on Icardi, who PSG might be willing to sell for budgetary reasons. It could be a loan with an option to buy. They can't bring in Icardi if they have Dzeko there. They've got to move Dzeko on to have the space in the payroll to bring in Icardi. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on Roma in general, because now the pressure has increased for Paulo Fonseca. Owners reportedly met with sporting director Tiago Pinto to discuss the current situation. They lost 2-0 to Napoli last weekend. Il Corriere dello Sport is saying that the players are perplexed by the choices of Paulo Fonseca, the manager. The manager is very disappointed with the team. He spoke of a lack of courage, which is pretty harsh. The captain, Lorenzo Pellegrini, said he doesn't agree with the coach about that. That's not a good situation. Roma's in 6th right now. Lazio are right behind them. Fonseca has not been the tough guy, really, since coming to Roma, and this was kind of like, whoa, this is out of character. La Gazzetta dello Sport is saying that Maurizio Sarri and Max Allegri are the leading candidates to take over at Roma should Fonseca leave. Allegri has already expressed his appreciation for the Friedkins project. How much money he wants could be an obstacle. According to Corriere dello Sport, Julian Nagelsmann is also on the list because he's on every list.
Of course he is.
Benfica and Napoli are monitoring Fonseca, which is kind of strange because Napoli just beat Fonseca's Roma 2-0. Why would you go hire the guy you just beat 2-0? Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Nope.
An interesting one out of Barcelona. Eric Abidal gave his first interview since leaving the club, and he said that he wanted to bring Neymar back to the club in the summer of 2019. 10 days before the end of the transfer window, Abidal went to Paris to talk to Leonardo, the PSG sporting director. It was with the CEO of Barcelona. They were talking about Neymar. If they hadn't signed Griezmann, they could have signed Neymar, is what Abidal is saying. What they needed, according to Abidal, was a winger. When Neymar was at Barcelona, he was amazing. It's not about which player is better. It's what I thought was the position we needed at the time. The team needed a real winger. The president decided to sign Griezmann. There was also the fact that Neymar had a court case against the club because there was a lot of back and forth about money that he said he was owed, and that would have had to stop to get the deal done. That would have complicated it. But Abidal saying the team needed a real winger, the president decided to sign Griezmann, is your headline here. That's a big one. Real Madrid is being linked to Cristiano Ronaldo every day. There would have to be other moves that would not happen for that to come in. The Daily Mail, the Daily Mail always talks about rumors. They say the same thing that's been said over and over and over again. Real Madrid's going to go after Haaland and Mbappe first, and if they don't get them, then yes, they could turn to Ronaldo, possibly, maybe, sort of, maybe. The Newcastle thing with 6 days off during the international break, still baffling to me. Alex Pacine, if you have any insight, I'd love to hear it. Manchester United will have a new sponsorship deal in the front of their shirt, Team Viewer. It is worth £47 million a year. That is £17 million a year less than the Chevrolet deal. That was $64 million a year. It's the biggest ever struck by a football club for shirt sponsorship. They can make up some of that if they sign a new auto sponsor, an exclusive auto sponsor, to make up some of that £17 million gap. So they do have a gap in their revenues and sponsorship, but they've got some other avenues to do it and handle it and sort it out. So we'll see if Manchester United can continue bringing in that cash that they're going to need to go sign Erling Haaland if they want to do that. Mikel Arteta had an interesting quote. I bring this up because of our conversations yesterday about style, philosophy, direction versus tactics. Arteta gave an interview to BN Sports, and he said, the style is who wins. He who wins has style, and he who has style wins. In football, one day you have a style, the next day you are ish. Fill in the gap. When you make players better, when you have the capacity to inject a style into a club, that's what being a good manager is. Win or not, there are lots of things that contribute to whether or not you win titles. But it is that capacity to convince, to get your ideas across, and make the team play in the way you feel. You can tell Mikel Arteta worked with Pep Guardiola for a long time, and you can tell he's also studied somebody like Marcelo Bielsa. Bielsa has talked about the convincing being one of the number one things that a manager has to be able to do. You have your ideas about the way you want the team to play. You have your desired style. You have your principles of play. You have your game model, whatever you want to call all of that. All that's great. It can be a wonderful book. It doesn't mean anything if you can't convince your players to do it. If you can't convince your players that, yes, you're going to need to run a lot to play in this way, or you're going to need to be patient and wait for the ball to come to you, or you're going to need to sit in this position and read the game and sometimes drop and help your center backs. Those are things that separate good theoretical guys, good, chalkboard managers to managers who win things. You've got to have the right ideas to win. You've got to be able to convince your team to play in that way to win. If it falls apart in any portion of that, then yes, as Mikel Arteta says, the next day you are ish. It is a results-driven business. But you've got to have the ability to convince your players of the direction you're taking them. And that's what it comes down to. You've got to find that balance. I think there are different ways to win. Of course. I mean, we've seen it with guys who are more defensive. We've seen it with guys who play pure positional play idea. We've seen it with guys who find hybrids. You can compare Pep to Klopp to Flick to Coleman to Pochettino. I mean, you can take all of those guys right now. All of them. We'll keep that group together. All of them have things that are similar. They all have things that are different. Tuchel can fall into this too. They all have things that have similarities, but they all have their own spins on it. That's like that group all has a very basic idea of seeing the game in similar ways. But Tuchel can go more defensive if need be, as we've seen with Chelsea. Coleman can go more defensive, as we've seen. Coleman will go into a 3-5-2 because it suits what he has right now. Whereas Pep will do this very interesting thing with it's almost like a 3-2-2-3 right now. That's really unique and really outside the box. But he's got the buy-in from his players to do it. Then you've got guys like Ancelotti, Zidane, Conte to a degree, who are more about, I'm going to put my best players in positions to win games for me. And there's not this overriding style and way you feel the game and to make the team play the way you feel. And that can work too. There's not one way. We've seen Mourinho win with very defensive soccer. We've seen plenty of managers win with defensive soccer. We've seen managers win with amazingly wonderful soccer to watch. It's all about the convincing. That's the number one thing, even more than the ideas, because if you have good ideas but you can't convince the team to follow it, doesn't matter. If you have bad ideas, but you can convince the team to follow it and run through walls for you, you can get places. You can. So it's a really interesting interview with Arteta and beIN Sport. That line jumped out to me after some of our conversations yesterday.
Yeah, you can apply it pretty much to any sport that you watch. And if it's the coach that sits there and just puts stuff up on a board, and then it's like, do this, just go out there and do it. And then you have the coach who, lays everything out there for you and is convincing in his argument and convincing in the results. There's the buy-in that's there when you see everything happening in front of you, that everything that the coach has been telling you is paying off. And you talk about that idea of convincing. It's like, okay, here's what I'm telling you. I'm going to tell you that the sky, let's just say the sky is blue. The sky is blue argument. You make an incredible argument that the sky is blue, and the guy sits there and says, okay, yeah, the sky is blue. I believe you. Then I will continue to work that philosophy too. Somebody tells you that the sky is green, you look at him and you think that he's crazy. But then if there's the convincing that the sky is green, and you sit there and go, yeah, okay, I see the sky is green. So it's all in the convincing to make sure that what you're coming out there with your philosophy is successful. I think that it's something that we see in a bunch of different sports, but Arteta is right. It comes to that notion of convincing folks that what is out there can work, can function, and can be successful. I think he's 100% right on.
Yeah, for me, the point is, if you have great ideas but you can't convince the players to follow them, you can't be successful. If you have so-so ideas, but you get the buy-in of your players and you can convince them to follow, you're going to be better off in the long run. If you don't have that ability to convince the players of what you're looking for, if you don't have that, you're going to struggle as a manager.
Yeah.
You're going to. And, it goes back to our conversation earlier with Scott Brown being linked with a move to Aberdeen and joining the coaching staff of Stephen Glass. It's where is he going to be on that spectrum? First, he's going to be an assistant and a playing assistant, it sounds like. So it's a pretty unique role. You're not asking him to have the ideas yet, but you are asking him to be involved in convincing the group to follow the ideas that are established by the technical staff.
Yeah.
That should be something that he is very good at. That should be a strong suit of his. And you get some managers who maybe they don't have those ideas. Some coaches, some managers who don't have this big philosophy of a way to play, but they're great at convincing. Maybe they work better as an assistant. Maybe they work better to support somebody who is a great idea person, but isn't as strong on convincing the squad, isn't as good with that man management at times that is necessary. You need to have both. The best have both inside of one person. But if you don't, you need to understand what you lack and surround yourself with the people who can help bridge that gap. And it's going to be fascinating to see what this can look like. Jarrett, we've talked about kind of big picture stuff with ideas and convincing and et cetera. I don't know if you heard that last bit about Scott Brown. You're not asking him to come in straight away, and I think it's a good spot for him because he's not setting a philosophy of the way to play. You're asking him to come in and help convince the squad of the right way to play.
Yeah.
That should be in his strong suit, right?
Should be. Did I miss something? Has that been confirmed?
No, not yet.
Or are we still talking?
We're still talking
cool.
hypothetically.
Okay. Yeah, that should be in his strong suit to kind of reinforce things and to say, here's what it has taken in the past to get to the promised land that you want to get to. Here's how you have to approach these things. Here's how you have to approach the day-to-day. I'm not even sure you're asking him to come. I don't think you're asking him to come in and be, even like a captain in the shadows kind of thing. You just want him to come in there and provide, a mentality, and to be if it is what happens, you want him to come in and provide that mentality, and maybe be that guy who comes into a game every once in a while. But you also want him to kind of usher in that next generation. You've got young players coming up. It's not the same kind of player, but if you want to add a little edge to Lewis Ferguson, that's a guy who can bring it to him.
Yeah, and that's a player who could really benefit from something like that. It's just an interesting thing when you talk about managers and you start to judge who can be successful or not, and you see players start to make this transition. There was a bunch of chatter in the Twitch pitch about next for Atlanta United too. Is this something like, Jeff Lorenowitz? Is it some like Michael Parkhurst is not in Atlanta right now, but, former players who you're like, oh, they would be really interesting as a manager. One, you need some experience, I think. And as we saw with Glass coming from the academy and working on the youth side, made sense to make that transition. That's one thing you need. Jack Collison, who's in the academy right now, for example, working, who has that playing experience, is he ready for something like that? But you're looking for people who are successful as managers, have the ideas of the way to play. As in a second team role, you're not setting the philosophy as a whole. There is a club philosophy. But you've got to be able to convince your squad. You got to be able to train in the philosophy, but you've also got to be able to convince them it is the right way to play. There's a lot of elements that go into successful management. And not every former player, not every smart person in the game is best as the number one guy. Maybe they're better as a number two. Maybe they're better as a number three. Maybe they're better in a reserve team role. Maybe they're better in a youth team role. There's all kinds of different roles, and not everybody is a fit for every one of them. That's where it can get difficult. Sam Williamson says Kevin Kratz to coach the twos. He has no coaching experience. I mean, that's the one thing that makes this difficult is he hasn't managed. I don't know where he is on his badges, for example. I don't know where his coaching education is right now. There are elements like being a player and then going into management. Yeah, you know what a training session's like. You know what running a team is like from your perspective. It's not easy to just do it and just walk into it. It can happen. I mean, Jason Christ won MLS Cup not long after he retired as a player, and he hung up the jersey and put on a suit and started in on it. That happens sometimes. It's not easy to do. Zinedine Zidane, he had success really quickly. He had a little bit of experience before that too. It's tough. It's just really tough. There's no, I think, one way for this to happen. Right. There's no one way for this to be successful. So you've got to have the right fit as a personality, and you've got to have the right group around you, and you've got to have the right ideas, but you've also got to be able to convince the people to follow those ideas.
Yeah.
So we will keep you posted. Go ahead, John. Do you have something?
No, I was agreeing with you. Yes. No, I was just agreeing with your assessment that there are different ways to do things.
Okay. I thought you were trying to move us along.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Let's jump into the MLS position groups here. We talked a little bit about defense last week. I want to get into the midfields around the league. I want to hear from you guys who you think has the best midfield in MLS. First off, throw it in on the Twitch pitch. You can do that on the Twitters as well at Soccer Down here. Let us know who you think has the best midfield in the league. Philadelphia, on paper, has a really good midfield with the injury potentially to Jose Martinez, and I haven't seen an update yet on that. It's going to take a hit. Christian Dyer on Twitter is reporting that Philadelphia is closing in on a young American playing in Germany, Leon Fleck. I'm not sure, because he's born in Texas, but it looks like he grew up in Germany, so I don't know exactly his ethnicity and everything here. He's played as a 6. He's played as a left back. He's 20. He hasn't played much in the second division at all for St. Pauli. He came up through their U17 and U19 teams. He was coming off the bench for St. Pauli in a number of games, but he hasn't played since January 28th. So I don't know exactly what the situation is, but they're looking at him. He would not count as an international player. He was born in Texas. I don't know if this is a big get or not. Not getting into second division stuff in Germany, I don't know. Kai Wagner came from a lower division and was very good for Philadelphia. You do have a sporting director and a front office there that knows the lower divisions in Germany really, really well. That would make you feel pretty good as a Philadelphia fan. But you're talking about a young player with very limited experience here. That's on the boards. That could help make Philadelphia's midfield better. The other moves in MLS right now are not midfield related, but I want to get them out of the way. There's reports out of England, and this has been talked about before. Kieran Gibbs from West Brom joining on a free in the summer. 9 starts for West Brom this year. He's been okay. He started 14 times for West Brom in the championship last season. He was okay. Doesn't seem all that exciting. Minnesota, Ramon Avila. Now it sounds like that deal is on. Boca has reached a verbal agreement, according to TIC. He would go on loan to Minnesota until the end of the year, free of charge, option to buy. He played for Boca for 3.5 years. He's under contract through June of 22. He did recently have surgery for a sports hernia and is recovering. He's not currently training. 83 games at Boca, 36 goals, 3 titles, 2 league titles, and the Copa Diego Armando Maradona last year. So he's been successful. He's on the outs. He needs somewhere to play. Minnesota's a really good landing spot. That's a really good get for the Loons. That looks like it's done. So, midfields. I had Philadelphia pretty high, and now I'm kind of wondering if Martinez is out. I want to hear what your best midfields in the league are. I'll tell you the ones that I have in my top 10 right now. And this is right now. There are teams outside of this that could be better. Atlanta, for example, is not in the top 10 right now for me because I don't know who's going to play in that midfield yet. Santiago Sosa is young. Is he going to be as good as we think he can be? If it's Ezequiel Barco, who also, by the way, feliz cumpleaños, Barquito. It is his birthday. He's 22 today. Is it Barco? Is it Moreno? And who is the other one there? Is it Hindman? Is it Hosetu? Who slots in? I don't know. I don't have the answer yet. So they're not in the top 10 for me because of those questions. LAFC has the best midfield in the league for me. They do. Columbus is next. Minnesota's next. Chicago is after that. Nashville is after that. Sporting Kansas City, Orlando, Philadelphia, Seattle, and Portland round out the top 10 for me. LAFC, because of Atuesta, I think he's just one of the best in the league. Kay and Blessing, I mean, that's a really well put together midfield. They play together well. You do have the question about the physicality. You do have the question about Atuesta being more of a ball-playing 6 as opposed to a defensive midfielder when the time comes for it. He needs to develop that side of his game, yes. But in a season, that's the best midfield. Columbus is right there with Zelarayan, with Nagbe, with Artur. I think LAFC is slightly better.
No, I had Columbus high on my list. I had LAFC high on my list.
Well, which one's better?
You know,
Make a stand.
between
or is somebody
Columbus,
else better? Well, who's the best? That's what I'm asking.
No, I had Columbus as the best, and I also looked at the depth that was there in addition to the starting numbers. Because in looking at Columbus, I had and I was going by positions that were listed on the MLS soccer website when it came to roster lookup. It's Artur with Zelarayan, Nagbe, Santos.
Okay, hold on. The positions on roster websites. So let's throw that in the trash first off, because it's not always accurate. When I say the midfield grouping, I'm talking about the central midfield here. I'm talking about your midfield trio. Not including wingers in this. First off, I should have clarified this, because they're not part of midfields. When we're talking about a 4-3-3, we're not including the wingers as part of the midfield and the striker by himself. It's the central midfield. It's the central midfielders. That's the defensive midfielders. That's the interiores, the central midfielders, the 8s, the 6s, the 10s. I mean, whatever terms we want to throw around, it is those guys.
So then for me, it is LAFC with Atuesta, Blessing, and Mark.
Why did it change? Why did it change?
Well, because like I said, I've got Artur, Zelarayan, Nagbe.
Those are all good.
Yeah. So I'm looking at offense versus defense. I know that it's like 1 and 1A for me.
No, John. You said Columbus was better, and you based it on Zelarayan, Artur, and Nagbe. That's what you're comparing to LAFC and Atuesta, K, and Blessing. Right. Which 3 do you think is better? You said Columbus.
I'll go with Columbus. Yeah.
Okay.
Because of what Nagbe can do with the ball.
That's what I was wondering.
And so I'll go Columbus and LAFC as my 1 and 2.
Okay, Jarrett, if you're with us, central midfield.
I am.
Who do you like the best in MLS in terms of the power rankings?
For me, it is Columbus as well. I think they're a little more well-rounded. As what to the points that y'all have made. I mean, you guys have basically spoken to my points, so not much to contribute here. But as good as LAFC is, I do have questions about them defensively in the midfield. They've answered my questions over the last few years about having cojones, but I think that for me, the Columbus midfield's a bit more well-rounded. If it doesn't have as high of an offensive power outlet upside, it's a bit more well-rounded for me, and I like what they can contribute. I like what they showed in the playoffs, especially when we had questions about them going into the playoffs, and they were able to do their job pretty damn efficiently. I was impressed. Philadelphia is on that list as well. I'm trying to think who else.
Minnesota's right next, and the reason they're behind the other two for me
That's
is
a good shout.
Well, I want to see how it plays, because I don't think Osvaldo Alonso is a 34-game-a-year guy now, and they brought in Will Trapp for a reason. Does Will Trapp, Jan Gregush, and Bebelo Reynoso, does that become one of these best midfields? It has a little more balance in it than I think LAFC does, but can Trapp be the guy that we've thought he could be? I mean, he wasn't last year in Miami. It just never worked out. Minnesota plays very differently than Diego Alonso was wanting to play. I think it's suited to him. I think he can do really well, but he's a very different kind of midfielder than Osvaldo Alonso. So what does it look like? That's why they're third. On paper, they can be great, but I want to see how it plays out. I don't know.
If he was healthy, I want to always believe in and they're at the end of their run, but I will always believe in Portland, in whatever's left in Chara's legs. Seba blew his knee up, unfortunately, but
well, he's back. He's training, and he's wide. No, he's a wide player. Don't factor him into this. He's a winger.
Okay, fine. You're going central. Until Diego Valeri stops doing Diego Valeri things, I'm just going to keep believing in Diego Valeri.
Yeah, but Portland's a step back from all these teams to me. Portland's not in the conversation with Columbus, LAFC, Minnesota, because Diego Chara, outstanding. 35 years old.
That's right there is where I'm going.
He was great last year.
I agree.
Valeri was great last year. Also 35. Who's the third? Is it Eric Williamson? He was
Would be my guess,
very good in stretches last year. You've got Christian Paredes as well. You've got Renzo Zambrano. Those are your central midfield options. But Williamson, when we're talking K, Blessing, Atuesta, Blanco, I'm factoring out wide. I'm not factoring him in there because I don't think you're going to play Chirav, Valeri, and Blanco centrally. You're going to get killed in that direction because that's 33-year-old plus guys. I think Blanco will play as a winger. Portland is a little bit late in their run, but they can still win this season. I absolutely think they can. But Williamson's going to have to step up in a big way and be better than a supporting cast member. Because when you talk Atuesta, Blessing, Kay, when you talk Nagbe, Artur, Zelarayan, when you talk Trapp, who is a question, and that's why they're not number 1 or 2, Gregush, and you talk Reynoso, Williamson's not in that class right now. He's close. He can be. He can be in the class with an Artur. He can be in the class with a K. He can absolutely be in the class with a Mark Anthony K. I think he has it in him. I agree, Unc, but he's not there yet. So they're a little bit further back. And that's my rankings are based off the here and now, and they can change. Portland, if Williamson takes that step, and if Turan and Valeri can continue to play like they're 25, not 35, they'll be higher. I think Atlanta can absolutely be higher if Sosa is what we expect him to be, and the question gets answered about who's the other one in the trio. Another one that's really good that doesn't get talked about enough is Chicago. Chicago's central midfield is very, very good. The holding midfield portion of it is as good as it gets in the league, in my opinion. Medran, outstanding player. Outstanding player. Gaston Jimenez, outstanding player. A player that Gabriel Heinze really valued at Vélez. And they were both really good last year. That's a great base. Who's it going to be in front of them? That's the question for Chicago. That's why they're a little bit further back. You know, you saw last year Fabian Herbers drop in and play that role almost a little bit more like a second forward in their 4-3-3. But it worked best for them. They moved Mihailovic out wide in that scenario, and now they've moved him on to Montreal. Does Herbers become that guy coming in from the wing and playing as a number 10/9.5? Could be. You know, could it be somebody who was injured last year, didn't play much for them in Luka Stojanovic? Does he become more of a traditional 10? Chicago's really, really good. I don't think it's as potentially spectacular as Minnesota can be with Reynoso as the 10 or Zelarayan can be, but it's really, really good. It's really, really good. And they don't get enough credit in this. I don't think Nashville gets enough credit in their midfield. The pairing of Godoy and McCarty was perfect. They complemented each other really, really well, and you saw when Godoy was hurt how much of an effect it had. Tob Ryan-Anunga, good spelling, 971 minutes. He was good, but he's not Anibal Godoy, and you can't expect him to be. What Nashville needs is Hani Mukhtar to play like a designated player consistently. He was really good in flashes, but he's the one that can elevate that midfield from really good and especially really good defensively to a midfield on a contending kind of team. Mukhtar's got to be the guy that they paid for and the guy that they expect. If he is, Nashville, with as good as their backline is and as good as their midfield can be, they can absolutely be a contender.
Yeah, I had Nashville in my top 10. I just didn't realize that Tob Ryan-Anunga had played almost 1,000 minutes last year.
Yeah. Played a lot. They're number 5 for me. Chicago's 4. Sporting is next in mine. And this is preseason too, and it will change. Sporting, I've always been really high on Ilie. He's 30 now, but he's still a really good player in Peter Vermes' system. Gadi Kenda was really good at times. Gianluca Busio, he's going to wear the number 10 now. There's even more expectation for him. They did bring Roger Espinoza back. They signed Remy Walter from France, played in Turkey, 26. You've got a lot of guys. Sporting could be one of the best. They could be a top 3, but what group is it? Is it Ilie, Busio, and Kenda? Does Busio become the true number 10 here? Is it Ilie, Walter, and Busio? Does Kenda go out wide? I don't know yet. but they have the talent to be one of the best. I just don't know what it looks like yet. I think Peter Vermes has a good group here, but Remy Walter coming in from the Turkish First Division, how does he look hitting the ground? Does Kenda play more consistently here? He averaged a 6.89 rating on SofaScore through about 1,600 minutes. That's good. You paid for more than that. Do you want to free him up and put him out wide maybe and give him the opportunity to run at people more? I don't know what the trio, the pairing is here for Kansas City yet, but they have the talent to be one of the best. Who else kind of jumps out in your mind, Jared, as you think about the midfields around the league? Or John. Or Jared.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that covers a lot of them. A lot of them I just have questions about. Like, I have questions about what Orlando is going to look like. I have a lot of questions about what Miami's going to look like and how Miami's going to function as a midfield. Of course, I have questions. Miami's going to not get slapped across the face for the Blaise Matuidi situation.
There's that.
Yeah.
I've got Miami because you mentioned them. Where did I have them? 13.
I mean, so that's, middle of the league kind of thing. I don't know, man. That's,
for example, I've got Atlanta 15.
Okay.
And I've got Atlanta 15 because when you compare those two, for example, for Miami, if it's Gregore, Matuidi, I mean, they're not going to kick Matuidi out of the league. Let's not get confused here. He's going to be with Miami. It's just you're going to have to deal with your roster stuff, and you can do it. Gregore, who we need to see, Matuidi, and Pizarro, that's really good. I mean, Matuidi and Pizarro is really, really strong. Now you compare that to what Atlanta could be in Sosa, Barco, and Heinemann. Okay. Which one plays better? I think we're going to be looking at different groupings by the time we get to the summer in terms of what number 1 through 15 is. But right now, if you had to look at those two, Gregory's a question, but Matuidi, what his track record is, what his age is, and you did see good and bad things from him.
Yeah.
Pizarro, what he can be, versus Sosa, who you need to see more, 22 games under his belt at River. Barco, who would be coming inside to play in a little bit different role, and Heinemann, who you need to see more from. Like, I think Miami being ahead of that is okay. It's very close right now. But Atlanta can be better than a lot of these other teams around them, too, if things develop the way that we think they can.
So then I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Where'd you have Toronto?
I had Toronto right ahead of Miami.
Okay.
Toronto, when you look at that group, Michael Bradley's 33, played almost 1,300 minutes last year. He had the injury early on, was still very good. Marky Delgado and Jonathan Osorio, for me, are 2 of the best players in the league. And when you can do things like play Delgado, Osorio, and Pozuelo as your midfield pairing or midfield trio, a little weaker defensively, but if you're going to dominate possession, okay, you can do that. If you want Bradley in there for Pozuelo and move Pozuelo out wide to free him up in a playmaking role from a wide position, really dangerous. I want to see what Chris Armas does with this group because we saw Greg Vanney do different things with 4-3-3 or 3-5-2. He's got the forwards to play 2 up top if Chris Armas wants to go in that direction. What are Chris Armas's beliefs about the way the game should be played? What does he feel in how the game should be played? Is it what we saw at Red Bull, or was that what he was told to play? Because what we saw at Red Bull, a lot from him was a 4-2-2-2. If you did that here, you could have it work like Akinola and Altidore up top. You're not really looking at true wingers, which you don't have a ton of if you're Toronto, so that would make sense. You could play Pozuelo and you could play Osorio in that group and then play Bradley and Delgado deeper, or you could move Delgado higher and drop Osorio deeper. And it's very fluid anyway. As your 4 in the midfield, if you want to go with a box, it actually suits your talent pretty well. And then you've got the outside backs, if you're Chris Armas, to play with Alro and Richie Larea, who can cover the whole wing and get up and provide the width. And your center backs are probably going to be Mavinga and Omar Gonzalez, which is a really good team. That's a really good group. Can Chris Armas get the best out of that group? And if that's the midfield, if it's Bradley, Delgado, Osorio, and Pozuelo, if they play it in that way, maybe they need to be ranked a little bit higher. The question would be Bradley at his age. But Osorio and Delgado are really, really good when it comes to central midfielders. And Pozuelo is one of the best players in the league. The question is just, does he always play in the central midfield?
Yeah. And then my follow-up question is, Philadelphia with Martinez, without Martinez, where would you have them?
Without Martinez, they're not in the top 15 because I don't know who's going to play that role like he did. With him, they are 8th. Martinez, Montero, Bedoya, and then the question is Fontana as the 10 because it's different than Brendan Aronson. So we have to see what that looks like. It can work. Fontana has performed well in his limited minutes, but they're limited minutes. He's 21. Bedoya really suited to the system. 34, he can still do it. He was one of the best players in the league last year. Montero, even better at 27. Playing in that diamond midfield, it really suits the players that you have. And it worked because of Martinez, because of what he did at the base of the diamond. If he's not there, can Matej Oravec be that guy? He was brought in to be somebody that competed for time. We didn't see him last year. I don't know who else it would be. That's the challenge for Philadelphia, is if Martinez is an issue, and we don't know if he's out for the year. Let's not act like that's the speculation, because I haven't seen anybody say that.
Right.
But, if he's not as good as he was last year, they're going to struggle a little bit. The question's for me more at the 10. I mean, we got to see what the injury is with Martinez, but the question's at the 10 because you're handing the keys to Anthony Fontana. And in their midfield, that's the central midfield. It's a diamond. It's 4. Toronto might be a box of 4, but shaped a little differently. Most teams play 3. And that will affect how these rankings go for me. Is you're looking at the strength of this group, and teams that have more strength in their system and play that diamond, yeah, it can be higher. But then their attacking group might be a little bit weaker because you're talking about a couple of guys. And in Philadelphia's case, you're talking about Kasper Shabilko, who's excellent, and Sergio Santos, who's been really good but a little inconsistent at times. Toronto, you've got Ayo Akinola, who had a flurry of a great run last year, but wasn't always the guy that he was when he was at his best. And Josie Altidore, who you have injury questions about every year. So maybe their midfield is stronger, but their attack's a little bit weaker because of the questions they have there. The other ones I had in my top 15 that we haven't mentioned, Orlando, which is a really good central midfield with Sebastian Mendez, with Andres Pereira, with Mauricio Pereira. Uri Rosell, still quality to me. Junior Urso, very, very good. You got a lot of options if you're Oscar Pereira. I had them in between Kansas City and Philadelphia, so 7th. I had Seattle here. Seattle's the one that I want to see what it looks like with the pairings, but Joao Paulo was outstanding in his first year. Christian Roldan, maybe still underrated. I don't know how, but he is. And Nico Lodero's Nico Lodero. I mean, at 32, he was still one of the best players in the league last year. It does fall off a little bit after that because you don't have a Gustav Svensson now. You're looking at Kellen Rowe picking up minutes there. Jordy Delem, can he continue to progress? Danny Leyva at 18, we barely saw him last year. Very promising young player, but where is he in that development run? If they have an injury, I don't know if they can be as strong as some other teams would be. I had Portland next. I had New York City after that. And New York City could be one that makes a big jump. New York City is a group that they really believe in to the point that they traded Alex Ring. Maxi Morales, older, has still been good, but can he play a lot of minutes? We don't know yet. But the ones behind him, Keaton Parks, James Sands, outstanding. Outstanding. But we need to see this group together. Maxi Morales needs to stay healthy. So you have a little bit more of an established group there than like Atlanta, for example. That's why I had them ahead of Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, for me, as I was piecing it together, I wasn't looking at the interior. I had the whole group together, and that was where my numbers were coming from. But this
is an important thing, John.
Yeah.
No. Stop. This is an important distinction. When you're talking about positional groupings and you're talking about them in this kind of way, it's why I include the goalkeepers in with the defenders, because they're not like on an island. They're part of the defensive group. You have to, I mean, even if you're a team that isn't trying to build out of the back a ton, your goalkeeper has to be able to play. He has to be able to play with the ball at his feet. He has to be able to contribute. Your central midfield is separate than your wingers. It's different characteristics. If you compare Neymar to Xavi, you're talking about two completely different types of players. So I think that you have to separate them. The wingers are attackers. They need to be considered part of the attacking group. So if you're breaking it down, and this is how I prep for games, I look at teams in terms of their outside backs, and I do separate left and right there. Their center backs, their goalkeepers, of course, when I'm doing a roster. But I look at that as a group. The central midfielders, I put them all together, and yes, some play defensively, some play holding, some play as a box-to-box, some play as an 8, some play as a 6, some play as a 10. Some play as a central attacking midfielder. I mean, we can put all kinds of terms to it, but they're all central midfielders. Wingers, and I don't worry as much about left-right there because they can flip. We see inverted wingers all the time. And the forwards. But the central midfielders are a grouping, and the attackers are a grouping, the wingers and the forwards. And I think that's kind of where the characteristics are all leading us at this point with how managers are starting to think about the games, but It's just a different, like wingers can play forward, forwards can play wingers a lot easier. Wingers can't really play as a holding midfielder as well. That's very tough to find. Or is there a player who can do it? Sure, but there's not many. Whereas a holding midfielder can play as an 8 or a 10 a lot easier than they could play as a winger. A winger could play as an outside back, but that's a different conversation too. I think when you group the players together, it's got to be the central midfielder separate from the wingers.
Okay. But yeah, I had Columbus, LAFC, Minnesota, Nashville, Sporting. I had Toronto as a part of my top 12. I had Portland as a part of my top 12. Orlando. The one team that I didn't, and I guess it's because of just not having seen them a whole lot, was Chicago. But then when you talk through Chicago, it makes a lot of sense with Jimenez and Herbers and
Jimenez and Medran. No, it's him. Yeah. Alaceda's a winger. No.
Oh.
No. He's a winger.
So Jimenez, Medran, and possibly Herbers.
Jimenez and Medran as the pair is better than McCarty and Godoy to me. It's about as good as it gets if you play two holding. You know, the other two that we talked about that are ahead of them, LAFC doesn't really play two holding midfielders. Atuesta sits behind Kay and Blessing when it works its best. Columbus, honestly, is super fluid in the midfield. I mean, it's not like Artur and Nagbe are just sitting really deep. They kind of take turns in who's sitting deeper. And Zelarayan's playing higher. So it's even more fluid. Those two are very fluid. It's not two holding midfielders. Nashville's two holding midfielders. It's like a 4-2-3-1 as opposed to a 4-3-3 with one holding midfielder. Chicago's like that too. It doesn't mean that Medran and Jimenez or McCarty and Godoy don't get forward and contribute. It just means your base shape is two holding as opposed to one.
Okay. So I had, that was, like I said, just from not having seen them, that was why Chicago was out of my thought pattern as a part of putting them in as a top 12.
No, they're just underrated. I mean, You're not the only one, but they're underrated. I mean, because it's not a sexy group, and they don't have that number 10 that grabs you. I mean, Zelarayan grabs your attention. LAFC, because they grab everybody's attention about everything. Other teams here, even Mukhtar, he's a designated player. You don't have the number 10 that grabs your attention there. Fabian Herbers isn't, getting put on posters in the league. Maybe he should, but he's not. The strength of Chicago's and the strength of Nashville's, is the holding side of it, which the Holding Midfielders Appreciation Society, they never get the attention that they deserve.
But yeah, no, I pretty much had, like I said, Columbus, LAFC, Minnesota, Nashville, Sporting. Miami was down toward the bottom of my 12. Seattle was a part of the discussion because of who you were talking about with Ladero and João Paulo and rolled on. They were up there at around 10. But no, it's like I said, I pretty much had the same list. But yeah, Chicago was my number one oversight.
They're just underrated. What are the comments on MLS from Twitter, John?
Let's see what the comments on MLS are on Twitter. Don't think we have any.
Make one
MLS.
up, John.
Gee, your list was fantastic, Jason. Keep doing them.
No,
Who's the
that's
next
not the
position
one
chain
that I
that we're
wanted.
going to have on the show?
That's not what I wanted. Good grief, man. No.
Guess what? It doesn't matter.
What would be next, John?
Oh, actually, yes, we do. Ricky Ricardo did bring one in as I went back a little bit.
See?
Hey, extra time came out with their top 5 position rankings for strikers.
Okay.
5-1.
Okay.
Barrich at 5.
Okay.
Polito at 4. Zardes at 3.
Okay.
Rui Diaz at 2.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph at number 1.
You say that like it's a surprise?
No, not to me.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I don't have a problem with that. Barrett is probably the one that surprises some people, but I'm good with him at 5. Zardes is really good, but I think Rui Diaz and Joseph are ahead of him. So, yeah, I'm completely fine with that. As pure strikers, yeah, that's a good list.
Yeah, so that was their pure striker list from extra time.
So our next one that some unnamed person that John made up asked about would be the attackers, but it's not just the strikers. It's the attackers and the wingers.
Okay, attackers and wingers. I'm writing it down.
Thank you. On the Twitch pitch, Jason Nix asks if media will travel to Orlando or still no-go. I believe it is still a no-go, but it could change. It is about 3 weeks or so. It's tough. I mean, I don't know all the protocols. I don't know all the situations here. Orlando isn't the largest press box either, by the way. It's not a huge space to be able to easily socially distance. This is a report, and it happens. Matias Martinez, who has been covering everything on Alan Franco very closely. He works for Radio La Red, AM 910 in Buenos Aires, reports that Alan Franco tested positive for COVID upon arrival in the United States. Doesn't change anything about the transfer. He would have had to quarantine before joining the team anyway. So, nothing about any kind of symptoms or anything. That has not been reported. So hopefully it is not a big deal here. Hopefully he's able to recover. Hopefully he's able to get it through his system very quickly, and then he's able to join the group. They do still have some situations to deal with, as has been talked about in multiple places. You have the 50% that is agreed upon, it sounds like, in a transfer. There is the other 50%, and what happens with it? Is there a plan for purchasing it over time? Is it an option? Do you extend the contract and then buy it? Do you not worry about it and you just sell him and you split the proceeds? What does it look like with that other 50? I think that still needs to be determined and is still being discussed. But he has tested positive, according to Matias Martinez. That is not official. Matias Martinez has been very close to all of this, but he is reporting that Alan Franco has tested positive upon arrival in the U.S., and that would mean a quarantine, and there you go.
Yeah. 2 week. It's 2 week quarantine and then constant testing.
It's all changing so much that I don't even feel like we know that's a definite at this point. I mean, he's, I think the quarantine or the isolation coming into the country is recommended, not mandated, but he has tested positive. But he didn't test positive like at the airport coming into the country because they don't do that, I don't think. I believe he would have had to have a negative test to get on the plane. this is where all the protocols and stuff are very confusing. Joining the group, he would have had to self-isolate anyway. Now, I'm guessing there would be the self-isolation and 2 negative tests that are required to join the group.
Yeah.
So, under MLS protocols. But he's got to be under MLS contract to get there, too, so you have all that to deal with. So it's a lot of things that are moving parts with this. I'm sure people are like, but doesn't necessarily have to be something to be about. Atlanta United just announced AT&T as a sleeve sponsor. Those pictures have been out there in some of the media stuff early on. New sleeve sponsor, on the left sleeve on the team's black primary kit, on the secondary kit, and on the third kit, which will be unveiled later this summer. That's from the press release. AT&T has been a founding partner of A&B Sports and Entertainment. Atlanta United was one of the few clubs, according to Darren Eales, to introduce sleeve partnerships prior to the 2020 season. They're pleased to be able to explore new partnership opportunities. So AT&T is officially on that left sleeve. I believe it's Piedmont on the right sleeve, American Family Insurance on the front of the shirt.
Yeah, that sounds right as I'm trying to picture it in my head. Picturing the jersey in my head. There you go.
Thanks.
Yep, what we're here for.
Yeah, totally. MLS questions from folks. We mentioned the one about the travel. Don't know yet. Florida is a little cray-cray. That's true, Jason Nix. KFC says, biggest get so far this offseason, which clubs? So biggest newcomers, because I'm not going to say like somebody like Joseph is a get because you're just getting him back. I'll run through it. I think Santiago Sosa could be that for Atlanta. I think Tomas Pochettino could be that for Austin. Chicago really didn't have to go big because they built a pretty decent core. The one that I'm intrigued to see because of what it could mean for the overall shape is Ivanov, coming from Bulgaria. How does he adjust? How does he look with this group? John Espinoza coming over as well could be a big surprise at right back and be better than Sekulic, who was good but not great. I think it's Ivanov for them, though. Stanislav Ivanov, 22-year-old Bulgarian, who could really elevate them. And if he's good on the right wing and Aliseda is good on the left wing, that becomes a much better team with a good forward up top in Beric and a really good holding midfield. That could elevate Chicago into a problem in the Eastern Conference. I mean, Cincinnati, it's got to be Brenner, and he could be the one league wide at 21, scored a bunch of goals in Brazil. Can he do that with Cincinnati? It'd be an accomplishment. They need the goals because they haven't had those consistently. Jurgen Locadia was an absolute failure in his time. It just hasn't worked, and I don't know if he'll even be there day one. His deal is through June 30th. I don't think he stays. Brenner has the opportunity to be that guy. For Colorado, they've went a different direction. I mean, they're building differently. They're taking established guys in the league or guys who didn't fit other places and bringing them in. They signed a bunch of homegrowns. Michael Barrios could be the guy for them coming over from Dallas. If you get a midfield for them, let's look at it. Jack Price, solid. He was actually really good last year. Cole Bassett, emerging into one of the best young midfielders in the U.S. Is it Nomley, who showed a lot of really good things for them? Okay, that's talent. That's a talented group centrally. Then on the wings, can you get Lewis over to the left? Or Barrios playing on the left, playing inverted. Get Jonathan Lewis and Barrios running at defenses. Okay, that's two really good wingers on the dribble. And then does Diego Rubio produce more? Does Shinyashiki get the job up top? Colorado could be good. Barrios could be the missing piece for them. He could. For Columbus, it's Kevin Molino, in my mind. He takes them from that midfield group that we've talked about, and if you put Molino out wide on one side and Pedro Santos on the other, with Jossie Zardes up top, that front six is as good as it gets. If Molino can be what he was at the end of last season, which was one of the best players in the league, that's a huge get for Columbus. For Dallas, is it going to be the center back, Jose Antonio Martinez, coming over from Eibar? He's 28. He's a veteran. They got him for a while now. Is he going to be that guy that makes them better defensively? Because Hedges is good, but they need somebody with him who is maybe a little bit more comfortable on the ball, can give them a little bit more in that possession. Martinez could be that. DC, I just don't have high expectations for DC at all. I really don't. Is it going to be somebody like Brendan Hines-Ike, who comes in as an American kind of veteran of the European game? Does he make that back line better? Is it Kamari Smith that they get from the draft? Could be. I mean, he's 23. He's not your typical new rookie into the league. He's got experience. He would count as an international, but he's got experience from professional academies. Kamari Smith could be that guy. I'm going to go with Hines-Ike, but it's just DC, there's not a lot exciting about them with what they've added. The most exciting thing is the manager and bringing in that style of play. That's the most exciting thing. Houston, I'll go Fafa Pico. I do want to see what this group looks like up top. You've got Pico, you've got Urruti, you've got Tyler Pasher, who was very good in USL Championship. You've got Darwin Quintero, you've got Christian Ramirez. It's a lot of pieces, but I don't know how it fits. And you've got the young Argentine who they signed late last year, Mateo Bacamic. I don't know how all that fits. The guy that I'm looking forward to at Houston the most has been there for a while, Memo Rodriguez. This needs to be Memo Rodriguez really stepping out and making this team his. But I don't know who the group is in front of him. I don't know what it looks like yet with Pico, Urruti, Pasher, Quintero, Ramirez, Bacamic. It feels like mismatched parts a little bit right now. LAFC additions, it could be Corey Baird, because he might be that number 9 that facilitates a lot with his movement, because his movement off the ball is really strong. It could be Moon-Hwan Kim, the right back, who could give them just a greater solidity in the back. Murillo was there last year. He's back again. Eddie Segura was there. The rest of the group is pretty much returning. But it's either Baird or Moon-Hwan Kim. Baird maybe is the sneaky pick on it, because he won't score a ton of goals. I don't think he'll have a ton of assists, but he'll create space for others. He'll do a lot of off-the-ball things that don't show up in the box score, but could make that attack better. LA Galaxy, they still need to do some work. They really do. Victor Vasquez, at 34, how much does he have left? I just don't know. But right now,
I hope he starts 20, though. I mean, you'd think.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. Right now, I mean, he's about it with the additions. Jorge Villafana, I mean, he's a 31-year-old left back. How exciting is that? Jonathan Bond could be the goalkeeper. Okay. They need to get better, and they really haven't. I guess it's Vasquez by default. Miami, I mean, it's a little bit of the same thing. It's got to be Gregore, the central midfielder. He was really good at Bahia. 27 years old. He averaged a 6.92 rating in 2,800 minutes with Bahia, who was not a great team. If he gives you that kind of performance in that midfield, they're a better team. And he makes Matuidi better because Matuidi doesn't have as much to do defensively, and he makes Pizarro better because he frees him up to be the creative player that he needs to be. I mean, Pizarro's performances last year weren't good enough for what they paid for him. They just weren't. I mean, to be that guy and to be one of the lowest rated players out of your top starters, that's not what you paid for. Gregore can make it better for all of them. Minnesota, Will Trapp. If Will Trapp is more dynamic in terms of possession for them than Osvaldo Alonso could be, and he pairs up with Gregush and Reynoso, yeah, Minnesota could totally be a problem. And if they get Wanchope Abila, as it looks like they will, you look at the front six of Abila up top, you've got Ethan Finley and Robin Lod out wide. You've got Reynoso, who has played with Abila as the number 10. That Reynoso-Molino combination was really good. You get Reynoso and Avila together, who've played at Boca together, and you've got Gregush, who's one of the more underrated players in the league, and Trapp holding it all down, being the backboard in possession. That's a strong team. That's a very, very strong team. I guess the biggest question is Ike Opara. Is he going to be back? Is he going to play? What's going on there? Montreal's biggest addition...
Johnson?
No, I'm going to go with Jordi Mihailovic. I don't know what Montreal's going to look like. It's a new manager. It's a lot of different kinds of pieces right now. I mean, Joaquin Torres coming in from Newell's on loan. He could be a surprise. I really like Jordi Mihailovic, and I know not everybody does. I think Mihailovic could be that creative player here that they need. Kiki Struna could be a little bit of a surprise in the back to give them a better defensive core. Kamal Miller as well. They've been active. I mean, Montreal, they've added a bunch of new guys. I don't know how it all comes together yet, but I'm going to go with Mihailovic as the creator. Nashville, newcomers, I think they're hoping it's Rodrigo Pinheiro, the young winger from Uruguay. He's played a lot. He has experience. If you get him on the opposite side from Leal and Cadiz comes good up top, that front six gets a lot better. Mukhtar's still the key to it, but Pinheiro can help with that on the opposite side from Leal. I mean, if Pinheiro gives you more going forward than Alex Muil did, for example, Nashville's a much better team. New England, I think they're looking for it to be Captum, the player coming with La Masia experience in that central midfield, because it can give you some different options. I think their central midfield's good. Luis Caicedo, getting him back, good. Matt Polster, solid. Scott Caldwell, solid. Tommy McNamara, good off the bench. Do you play Carlos Heel as a 10? Do you play Captum in that midfield and play Heel out wide? You can play Heel out wide and let him come inside, which is when I think New England was their best under Bruce Arena because of the outside backs you have. Brandon Bye, Tejan Buchanan if he plays as an outside back, DeJuan Jones on the other side, maybe Christian Maflo, one of their other new additions. Those guys can bomb forward, and they can control the wing. And you can have a winger who tucks in and doesn't really play out wide very much. That could work. But Captum is the one who could make them a much better team. New York City additions, Ronnie Dyla is still waiting on them.
Yes.
I guess it's your left back by default because he's replacing Ronald Matarrita. Malte Amundsen. He's got to give you Matarrita-level talent. There's a lot of expectation there because everything else is pretty much the same. Red Bulls, they have added some pieces. Winkelman Carmona is one centrally. You're looking for him to pair up with Drew Yearwood, with Sean Davis. Where does Caden Clark fit in? Is it centrally? Is it out wide? This player from Oeste, Fabio up top, does he give you more goal scoring than Barlow and White? Cameron Harper coming over from Celtic. What is he going to be this year? Carlos Coronel and goal coming over on loan from Red Bull Salzburg. Is he better than Jensen was or Mera was? Andrew Gutman. Is he better than Jason Pendant was? There's a lot of new faces with New York, and I don't really know which ones are going to be the ones that stand out. I think the one who could have the biggest impact is Fabio, the forward who's on loan through June with a purchase option. Because if he comes in and scores goals, they become a much more dangerous team. They've lacked that since Bradley Wright Phillips left. Orlando additions this year. I mean, it's got to be Pato, right?
Yeah.
With Daryl Dike gone, it's got to be Alexandre Pato. The sneaky one could be the Dutch winger that they added, Sylvester van der Water from Heracles. Because if they upgrade there and you go from Nani and Mueller being very good but maybe a little inconsistent to some combination of Nani, Mueller, Benji Michel at times out wide, van der Water, and Alexander Alvarado, who came in late last season, you could become much more dangerous out wide, and you can manage the minutes a little bit better and not run Nani into the ground. And Mueller, because I thought Mueller looked tired late in the year as well.
Yeah.
Philadelphia additions.
Finley.
I mean, kind of by default, but he might not start. It's so far we've seen Elliott and Glesnes together at center back in the preseason stuff. It's preseason, but it's been those guys. It's really by default because there's not really anybody else. So Finley could be the one, but he's got to earn time. Portland, you're going to get Nishgoda back from injury. That's going to help you a ton. The right back, Jose Carlos Van Rankin from Chivas. He's on loan with an option to buy. He was good at Chivas last year. 28 years old. He's a solid veteran. He was very good. Him and Claudio Bravo coming in as outside backs. Van Rankin was better at Chivas than Bravo was at Banfield. Bravo's a little higher rated because he's a little bit younger. Either one. I guess Bravo is probably the more important one because you don't have really any cover at left back. You've got Pablo Bonilla at right back if it doesn't work with Van Rankin. So we'll go Bravo by default. RSL, Anderson Julio. Yeah. I think he's the one that could have the biggest impact. On loan from Atletico San Luis. They still have work to do. San Jose, could be Eric Remedi. He's going to help that midfield. I think the one everybody's looking at is Chofis Lopez.
Yep.
Because he could give them another creative option for this team that needs it. Seattle needs some help. They need some help because Freddie Montero as maybe your biggest new addition and Spencer Ritchie as a backup goalkeeper, it's not exactly the most exciting.
No.
And there's really no impact from those. So Seattle gets nobody. We mentioned Sporting Kansas City earlier. Remy Walter could be that surprise that elevates this group as a whole. They also added a center back, a veteran center back in Nicolas Ismaet-Mirin, who played in Ligue 1, played a good bit in Ligue 1 in 2019-20. Does he, displace Graham Smith or Roberto Punchek or Fontas? Maybe, possibly. But I think it's Remy Walter who could be the one who makes that team much better. Toronto, in terms of additions, do they have any?
Armas.
Yeah, that's about it because it's pretty much the same group. It's the manager. Vancouver's got a ton of different additions, and I don't know what it looks like. I'm going to go with Deber Caicedo, the winger, who was really good at a young age in Colombia. He's 21. They got him for 3 years, an option for a 4th year. He was very good in a good bit of minutes in the first division in Colombia as a 20-year-old. So I'm looking at Deber Caicedo as the biggest one. Caio Alexandre from Botafogo could be that as well. He was good on a bad team, and he played a lot for a bad team, and he's another young one. Vancouver's gotten younger, and we'll see what Marc Dos Santos can do with the youth in this group.
Yeah, and for me, going all the way back to the top of the order, Austin could be both Pochettino and or, for your top. You could have 2 guys for Austin coming out of the blocks.
Well, they're a new team, so yes. Yeah. Who would be your and or?
Well, Dominguez.
Okay. Yeah, everybody's new in Austin, so you're just looking at who the most impactful ones are. Yeah. I think it's Pochettino. It absolutely could be Dominguez. It could be Alexander Ring. It could be so many different people there. But I'm really high on Pochettino. I was really impressed with him in Argentina. He was a player who stood out to me in the Copa Diego Armando Maradona. So Dominguez could be that guy. He's coming from Independiente. He spent time in loan in Paraguay. He spent some time in Mexico as well. He's kind of bounced around. Does he find solid footing in Austin and give you what people have expected from him at times? We'll have to see. Final questions.
We are caught up on the Twitter side, sir.
All right. Jason Nix is freaking out about COVID tests. Not really freaking out, but maybe a little. Katie says, speaking of COVID in Florida, the scenes from Miami Beach the other day.
Oh.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof. Burns says about all this, and look, we don't know. I mean, I think every league and every place is having differences about the 2-week quarantine, or if you test negative, or if you test negative twice. Is it longer? Is it shorter? What is it here? What is it with MLS? What is it in the United States? Yeah, I don't know. KFC says on Chicago, Berich with backing is scary. Yeah, Chicago, I thought they were solid last year. If they get that number 10 sorted out and they get that other wing, yeah, Chicago could be a problem in the East.
Definitely. I think that with the expectations that they have, with what we saw from them last year, you add a piece here, and I think that another year under Rafael Vicky, I think that obviously they're looking to finish a lot higher, and you get that piece together and you get it all to work. I think that Berich being one of your top strikers, I think that they could be a problem getting into the playoffs and then trying to make a case for being in the middle of the pack in the East or the playoffs.
Juan Arango is reporting that the Argentine League could start on Paramount Plus this weekend. I hadn't heard that. We'll keep an eye on it. They are playing through the international break, so there will be games this weekend. Keep an eye on it. We'll keep you posted. Had not heard that one yet. Jammin with a question. Jammin Dav 26. Kind of a random question, but speaking of sleeve sponsorships, do you guys wish the league limited teams to one sleeve sponsor so that cool team-colored MLS patch, so that cool team-colored MLS patch stays on the other sleeve? No, not right now, especially. Money's money.
Yeah.
Go get it. And in general, I don't have a problem with a sleeve sponsor versus a league sponsor. I do like the cool MLS patch that is in the team's colors. I do like that. But if you got to sacrifice that to make more money, I'm good with it for now. I'm good with it in general, to be honest. Maybe you can put that somewhere else. Maybe you put it underneath a number on the back or something. I don't know. We'll find a space for it because it's pretty cool. Or you just use it in different ways. But maybe on the shorts. I don't know. But, yeah, if you can sell the sleeve sponsor, I say sell it.
Yeah, in this environment, if you can find folks that would be interested in putting the patch or a sponsor on a jersey or a kit, I'm all for it right now.
Yep. Burns says, isn't Wanchope Avila a really, really good striker? He is a really, really good striker. He is. Absolutely. I mean, we'll like I mentioned his numbers earlier. He's played over 80 times for Boca, scored 36 goals, I believe. So if you're looking to get to know him a little bit, one, Russo at Boca has these things happen where it's just like he says, I'm not riding with you, and you're on the outside looking in, and you're not part of the group anymore. Now, Avila did have a sports hernia surgery. He wasn't brought back into the group. I believe he is ready to start training. He just hasn't when it comes to Boca. He started at Instituto in 2008, played there through 2014. He spent some time on loan at Sarmiento, at Deportivo Moron. Went to Huracan, where he scored 36 goals in 76 games. Spent a year in Brazil with Cruzeiro, then came back on loan to Huracan, where he did well. And then went to Boca in 2018. He's won 3 trophies there. He scored a bunch of goals in all competitions. He's 31. So, I mean, if you're Boca and you decide, all right, this is as good as he's going to be, there's going to be a decline, let's move on now. I get it. If you're also trying to shed veteran salaries that are not helping you as much at the moment, okay, you loan him to Minnesota. I get it. But, yeah, they've decided that he's not the guy they want to build around anymore. And Minnesota could really benefit. I said it last night. I feel like what they had in Luis Amarilla last year, this is a huge upgrade. Avila is a huge upgrade on that. And as good as they were last year, with Trapp now, I think, really fitting the way they want to play, and Avila coming in as that upgrade up top, Minnesota could move into the top spot in the West.
Yep.
Yeah, I felt like the West is a crapshoot, but Minnesota could move into that now with those kinds of additions.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the firepower. You bring in Trapp to help things out. You mentioned that front six, and that's pretty stout from what we've seen so far, at least bringing in folks. And, obviously the expectations of how folks blend together and relationships and things like that. But yeah, it's a stout looking group right now as you head into training camp.
And meanwhile, Boca's a mess. I mean, you're playing in that last match where they lost to Talleres. You played Tevez up top. Tevez is better playing underneath the striker now. You went with a 4-3-3 kind of shape that just didn't work. You do have young forwards coming that you're going to have to turn to in Luis Vasquez and Ezequiel Zabajos. Two young players that just got to play. And, it's not Abila long-term for them anymore. It's not Tevez long-term anymore, although Tevez is still an idol at the club. It's not Mauro Zarate anymore. He hasn't really been great for a while. So they've got to transition, or they've got to do what their dream is, which is to go get Edinson Cavani and bring him in the summer when his contract is up at Manchester United if they don't renew it. I think that's what they're shooting for. And if you go do that, then Abila's adios. But they got to play these young guys. I like Zabajos and what I've seen from him, but they've got to play him. And Russo's not really the guy who's going to develop talent. Ricky, about the New York City additions, mentioned Chris Gloucester. He's got to play. He's got to fight his way into playing time. He's one of those young Americans who is highly regarded, who went to Europe, didn't really break through in a major way. I don't know what he is. Just because he went to Europe doesn't mean he walks into an MLS lineup. I think those days are past. He has the potential, and he's always had it, but can he be the guy that we thought he would be a few years ago? We'll have to wait and see. Bernd likes Coronel, the guy on loan, the goalkeeper who was with the Red Bulls from Red Bull Salzburg. I think he spent some time with Philadelphia on loan as well in the past. Shiva said, since Glassy is gone, who will manage the twos? I have not seen an answer to that yet. My guess is Tony Annan steps in as the interim, at least for now, while they make a decision. Could it be Tony long-term? If he wants it, you'd have to rearrange the academy, roles and responsibilities, because I don't think long-term you can do both in that. That's tough. It's a lot of hours in the day. You could go the direction that some floated, as you go to an Argentine manager, because the second team could be more connected to the first team. You could. I think it's worked really well here because of the unique setup in the U.S. that it's connected more to the academy, which you might want your second team manager and your academy to be closer linked. And is it somebody from, like Stephen Glass was? Is it somebody from your academy coaching roster who moves up into that role with the twos? But I think it can be Tony in the short term. Katie says, I'm going to be really mad when New York City makes no moves and plays on a postage stamp and somehow finishes second in the East. I think the talent's too good this time. I don't think they can pull that off because, the East is a dogfight with everybody in the East improving themselves with the exception of DC, in my opinion. And I think long-term they will be improved. It's at the managerial level, and the talent's got to catch up. Yeah, they could be, New York City could get past because they're good, but Atlanta has more potential to be better. Cincinnati will be better. Chicago will be better. Teams that were behind New York City in the past have either passed them or have the potential to. It's going to be fascinating. Modaflow is negative on Anderson Julio. He will make a minimal impact if no one scores from his play. It's true. And RSL does have some questions about that. He can still make an impact, and then we're just judging, hey, finish what he did for you, please. I think he can still make the impact. But, yeah, you got to have other people around it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
A lot of arguing about Florida.
Couple of quick things while you're scanning. No Tevez or Juan Chope in the game day roster that was sent out by Boca for their match tomorrow against Defensores.
Yes, it's for tomorrow, right? And it is you're playing Defensores de Belgrano. You're gonna leave guys out. Juan Chope hasn't been part of the roster for a while, so that's not a surprise. Tevez being out is because he's old and needs a break, and you're playing a lower division team.
Yeah, and news out of Statesboro, Tormenta have added a closed-door friendly on April 8th against CF Montreal in Orlando.
Okay. Very cool.
So that'll be their second MLS closed door friendly in their training camp as they get ready for League One.
Very, very cool. All right. Scott Flood hanging out in the Twitch pitch. Again, Thursday we'll be at the Lost Druid Brewery in Avondale Estates. If you can join us, awesome. If you can't, that's okay. You can watch on Twitch. It'll be our Thursday night show starting at 6 o'clock. We will be giving things away, and you can win them if you're watching from home. You have to post a pic of a Lost Druid beverage in our Twitter feed, @SoccerDownHere, and you'll be entered to win. So make a trip over to Avondale Estates, get some Lost Druid, get ready for this, and we'll see you on Thursday, live and in person. And also, it looks like, according to shipping things, that we will have our new scarves for Thursday as well. So if you want to come pick yours up, if you've already purchased it, you could do that. If you want to come buy one, you could do that, assuming they arrive as they're supposed to. So fingers crossed they get here early in the day. And if you've ordered it and you've requested shipping, they will start to be shipped out once we can start to do that. So maybe on Friday. But yeah, looks like the new scarves are going to be in. So exciting.
Sweet.
Unc, don't know why people are anti-sleeve sponsor. Any way these clubs can bring in cash right now is a plus. Ding, ding, ding.
Yep.
Sharif, we're almost done. Don't get excited. Abby, AT&T has many local Atlanta companies, CNN for one. Yep, they have a lot of ties here. That is true. The Gilligan's theme, yes. Specials at the brewery on Thursday will start at 5 o'clock. The show will run from 6 to 8. Modaflow on Wanchope Abila. He's a decent striker, but I'm not convinced he's top level. MLS should be good for him. He's a very physical player. I think he's better than Luis Amarillo was. That's where I'm at with it. And Amarillo was a good fit for them. A very good fit. I think Abila can be even better, and I think that connection with Bebelo Reynoso could be very, very strong. I am absolutely thinking this could be great for Minnesota. Let's see here. So you have to go to Lost Druid to get their beers. They are still working on distribution. The best place to go is the brewery at Avondale Estates. And I think that's about it. Oh, Scott recommends the Double Hazy IPA. See, I'm not an IPA guy, so I'm out on that. Sorry, Scott. The Double Hazy IPA called That Which Is Forbidden. Okay. Not a Double Hazy IPA. I'm not an IPA guy, so I need something else, Scott. You're going to have to scout this out for me. Money is money, Sam Williamson, about the sponsors. I totally agree. Ricky Ricardo recommends the great article in The Athletic about Cuba and letting more players into their national team as they start World Cup qualifiers. We will get deep into CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers tomorrow on the show. There's a great preview at Soccer America going into detail about all the different situations in CONCACAF. We'll run through that tomorrow on the show. New York Times as well on the Cuban situation. Thank you, Ricky. Not The Athletic. It's the New York Times. Gracias. Alex Facine won't be there at Lost Druid. Will be there at Red Hair on April 1st. Yep. These shows are stacking up. We'll see you on Thursdays all over the area and even a little bit further outside the area as we get going. But Thursday nights, there will be live shows on Twitch, and we will be at various places sampling beers, or at least I will. And,
you will.
Yes, it's okay, John. It's okay. I will be sampling the beers and talking soccer and taking your questions, and we will be giving things away as well. That's going to do it for today. The big news of the day, Stephen Glass is the new manager at Aberdeen in Scotland. We will see what that means for Atlanta United 2. We'll see what his staff looks like. I'm sure we'll have lots of things to talk about, both about the Scottish Premiership with Stephen Glass going over there now and about the repercussions for Atlanta United 2. We'll get you updated on all the developments that happen from now until tomorrow morning on the show then, 9 a.m. Thanks for hanging out. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot, y'all.